The contract sat between them like a loaded gun. 19-year-old Lena Brooks stared at the man across the mahogany desk. Don Marcello de Luca, a crime lord who could end her father's life with a single word. His terms were simple: marriage or death. She had 24 hours to decide. Outside the Roman villa, armed guards patrolled marble corridors. Inside, her father wept in the adjacent room, broken by debts he could never repay. Marcello's dark eyes never wavered from her face, patient as a predator. "Your answer, signorina?" This wasn't a proposal. It was a transaction, and Lena was the currency. If you're hooked, stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and comment which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey reaches. The Eternal City looked nothing like the postcards. Lena Brooks pressed her forehead against the taxi window, watching Rome blur past in streaks of ochre and gold. Ancient architecture rose like monuments to empires long dead, their grandeur diminished by the anxious hammering of her heart. She'd imagined this trip differently, romanticized it even. A father-daughter adventure to save their struggling import business, visiting potential investors in Italy's historic capital. Her father, Richard Brooks, sat beside her in silence. The man who'd once filled their Connecticut home with laughter now seemed hollowed out, his hands trembling in his lap. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. For 3 days, he'd deflected her questions about their meetings, changing the subject whenever she asked for details about the investors they'd flown 6,000 miles to meet. "Dad," Lena touched his sleeve, "you're scaring me. Just tell me what's really going on." "What?" Richard's jaw worked soundlessly. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. "I made mistakes, Lena. Terrible mistakes." The taxi turned down a private road flanked by towering cypresses. At the end stood a villa that belonged in a Renaissance painting. 3 stories of honey-colored stone with terracotta roofs and balconies draped in flowering vines. Fountains danced in manicured gardens. Statues of Roman gods watched their approach with marble indifference. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. 2 men in dark suits emerged from the villa's entrance as the taxi stopped. They weren't smiling. One opened Lena's door with military precision, while the other circled to her father's side. Neither spoke. "Mr. Brooks?" The taller guard gestured toward the entrance. "Don DeLuca is expecting you." Don DeLuca. The name landed like a stone in Lena's stomach. She'd heard it whispered during their stay in Rome. Hotel staff had stiffened when her father mentioned meeting with Marcello's people. A concierge had crossed himself. Even the taxi driver who'd brought them here had driven in weighted silence, his eyes constantly checking the rearview mirror. Her father stumbled, climbing the villa's front steps. Lena caught his elbow, steadying him. "Dad, who is this man? What did you borrow from him?" "Everything." Richard's voice was barely audible. "I borrowed everything." The interior of the villa swallowed them in cool shadow and old-world opulence. Marble floors gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers. Renaissance paintings lined walls paneled in dark wood. Lena's footsteps echoed through corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly, each turn revealing another room more lavish than the last. They were led to a study on the 2nd floor. The room was a testament to power and patience. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves held leather-bound volumes in Italian, English, and Latin. A massive desk dominated the space, its surface bare except for a single manila folder. Behind it, tall windows overlooked gardens where more guards patrolled in pairs. And standing at those windows, silhouetted against the Roman afternoon, was Marcello de Luca. He didn't turn immediately when they entered. Instead, he finished whatever thought had captured his attention, hands clasped behind his back, shoulders perfectly squared. Even in stillness, he radiated authority, the kind that didn't need to announce itself because everyone already knew. When he finally faced them, Lena's breath caught. She'd expected a monster, some scarred, cruel-faced villain from a crime drama. Instead, Marcello de Luca was refined in a way that made him more dangerous, not less. He appeared to be in his late 60s, but age had sharpened rather than softened him. Silver hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. Strong jaw, Roman nose, dark eyes that missed nothing. He wore a charcoal suit tailored to perfection, a white shirt open at the collar. No jewelry except a watch that probably cost more than Lena's college tuition. Mr. Brooks, Marcello's voice was surprisingly gentle, with an accent that turned each word into music. Please sit. Richard collapsed into one of the leather chairs facing the desk. Lena remained standing, her defiance the only weapon she had. Marcello's gaze slid to her, one eyebrow rising slightly. For a long moment, he simply studied her, not lecherously, but with the focused attention of someone assessing a complicated problem. Lena lifted her chin, refusing to look away even as her pulse hammered. "And this," Marcello said softly, "must be your daughter." "Lena." Her father's voice broke. "Her name is Lena." "Lena." Marcello repeated it, as though tasting the syllables. "A pleasure. I am Marcello De Luca. Please sit. We have much to discuss." "I'll stand." The words came out sharper than intended. Something flickered in Marcello's expression. Amusement, perhaps, or approval. He gestured to the guard who'd escorted them. "Leave us. Close the door." When they were alone, Marcello moved to his desk with economical grace. He opened the manila folder, spreading its contents across the polished surface. Bank statements, loan documents, wire transfer receipts, a paper trail of her father's desperation laid bare in black and white. "Your father owes my organization $8.3 million, Marcello said, his tone matter-of-fact. Money loaned at generous interest rates to save his failing business. Money he has consistently failed to repay despite numerous extensions and renegotiations. Lena's stomach dropped. 8 million? Plus interest. Marcello's fingers traced one of the documents, which compounds daily. Dad? Lena turned to her father, needing him to deny it, to explain this away as some terrible misunderstanding. Richard Brooks looked like a man already dead. Tears streamed down his face. "I thought I could fix it. The business was hemorrhaging money after your mother died. I took a loan from the wrong people, used it to cover debts, took more to cover the interest. It spiraled. I kept thinking I could turn it around, that one good quarter would—" His voice dissolved into sobs. "Jesus Christ!" Lena pressed her palms to her eyes, fighting the panic clawing up her throat. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you ask for help?" "Because there is no help for debts like these," Marcello interjected quietly. "Your father understood this. He understood that when one borrows from men like me, the debt must be repaid. Always." The finality in his voice chilled her. Lena forced herself to look at him. "So what happens now? You're going to kill him?" "That is one option." Marcello returned to the windows, his profile sharp against the light. "But I am not a man who finds satisfaction in pointless violence, Miss Brooks. Your father's death would cost me $8 million and gain me nothing. I prefer arrangements that benefit all parties." "What kind of arrangement?" Marcello turned to face her fully. In the slanting afternoon light, his eyes were almost black. "Your father cannot repay his debt with money he does not have, but he has something else of value." A pause. "He has you?" The room seemed to tilt. Lena gripped the back of her father's chair to steady herself. "What?" "I am proposing a marriage, Miss Brooks. You and I will wed. In exchange, your father's debt will be erased completely. He will return to America, free to rebuild his life. You will remain here as my wife." The words didn't make sense. They couldn't be real. Lena laughed, a sharp, hysterical sound. "You're insane." "I am practical." Marcello's expression never changed. "I am 68 years old, Miss Brooks. I have built an empire that spans 3 continents, but I have no heir, no legitimate family to carry forward what I have created. My associates grow restless, wondering who will succeed me. Rivals circle like wolves, waiting for weakness. A wife, a young, intelligent wife who can bear children, solves multiple problems at once. I'm 19. I am aware of your age. This is human trafficking, slavery. You can't buy people." "I am not buying you." Marcello's voice remained maddeningly calm. "I am offering you a choice. Marry me and your father lives. Refuse and the debt stands. With interest. With consequences." Richard Brooks made a strangled sound. Marcello's gaze shifted to him. "Mr. Brooks understands what those consequences entail. He has seen examples." "No." Lena moved between her father and Marcello, as though her body could shield against what was happening. No, you son of a bitch. There has to be another way. I'll get a job. We'll sell everything. The house, the business, all of it. It would not be enough. Marcello pulled a single sheet from the folder, holding it up. Your father's assets, liquidated, might cover 1 million, perhaps 1.5 if you are fortunate. That leaves nearly 7 million outstanding. How do you propose to earn $7 million, Miss Brooks? She had no answer. The numbers were astronomical, impossible. Her hands shook. Marcello set the paper down. I am offering you an escape from an impossible situation. Marriage to me is not a death sentence. You will have comfort, security, protection. You will want for nothing material. In time, you may even find our arrangement agreeable. You're out of your mind if you think I'd ever— I think, Marcello interrupted, his voice dropping to something almost gentle, that you are a young woman who loves her father very much, and that you are intelligent enough to recognize when you have no good options, only difficult ones. Lena's throat burned. She looked at her father, crumpled in the chair, his face buried in his hands. The man who'd taught her to ride a bike, who'd sat through every school play, who'd held her when her mother died. He'd made terrible choices, catastrophic mistakes, but he was still her father. How long do I have to decide? The words felt like glass in her mouth. 24 hours. Marcello returned to his desk, closing the folder with decisive finality. Tomorrow at this time you will give me your answer. If you agree, we will be married within the week. If you refuse— He left the sentence unfinished. And if I run, if we both run, then you will die tired, Marcello said simply. I have resources in every major city in the world, Miss Brooks. There is nowhere you could hide that I could not find you. And when I did, your father's death would not be quick. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Richard Brooks finally raised his head. Lena, you don't have to— Be quiet, Dad. Lena's voice was hollow. She felt like she was watching this happen to someone else, some other girl in some other nightmare. Just be quiet. Marcello pressed a button on his desk. The door opened immediately, the guards reappearing. Mr. Brooks will be shown to guest quarters. Miss Brooks will have her own suite. You will both be comfortable tonight. Tomorrow, we will have your answer. Wait. Lena's mind raced, grasping for anything, any leverage. If I agree to this insanity, I want something in return. Marcello tilted his head. You are receiving your father's life. That is already a considerable return. I want guarantees. Written guarantees that he goes home safely, that you won't touch him or anyone in my family ever again, that this debt dies completely. Easily arranged. And I want to talk to him, alone, tonight. For the first time, Marcello smiled, a small, almost invisible curve of his mouth. Of course, you will dine together. I will have a meal sent to your suite. The guards moved to escort them out. Lena didn't look back at Marcello. Couldn't bear to see him standing there in his perfect suit with his perfect calm, as though he hadn't just blown her entire world apart. Her suite was on the 3rd floor, accessed through a private corridor. It was larger than her apartment back home. A bedroom with a canopy bed that could sleep 4. A sitting room with antique furniture. A bathroom with a marble tub the size of a small pool. Renaissance frescoes decorated the ceiling. The balcony overlooked gardens where the Roman sunset painted everything gold. It was a cage wrapped in silk. Lena stood at the balcony railing, gripping the stone until her knuckles whitened. Below, guards walked their routes with mechanical precision. The villa's walls were high, topped with decorative iron that would be impossible to climb. Even if she made it over, where would she go? She had no money, didn't speak Italian, and Marcello's threat echoed in her mind. There is nowhere you could hide. A knock at the door. Richard Brooks entered, escorted by a guard who retreated after ushering him inside. Father and daughter stood in silence for a long moment. I'm so sorry, Richard's voice cracked. Lena, I am so sorry. How could you? The question came out as a whisper. How could you do this? I didn't know it would come to this. I swear to you, I thought I could fix it before— He broke down completely, sinking onto the silk sofa. Lena wanted to hate him. Part of her did. But the larger part, The part that remembered him reading bedtime stories, teaching her to drive, crying at her high school graduation. That part couldn't let go. She sat beside him. Tell me everything. I need to know exactly what happened. Richard talked for an hour. The story spilled out in fragments, bad investments after her mother's death, the business bleeding money, a chance meeting with someone who offered capital at reasonable rates. He hadn't known at first who he was really borrowing from. By the time he understood the extent of DeLuca's reach, he was already in too deep. I kept thinking I'd turn it around, Richard said hoarsely. One more quarter, one more loan to cover the interest. I was going to tell you, but then you got accepted to Columbia, and I couldn't take that away from you. So instead you brought me here. Lena's voice was flat. To sell me to a mobster. No, God, no. I brought you because DeLuca demanded to see you. He said he wanted to verify you existed. I hoped. Maybe if I showed him you were real, a person with a future, he'd find another way. He found a way. Bitterness coated each word, just not the one you wanted. Dinner arrived on silver trays, pasta, wine, bread still warm from the oven. Neither of them ate much. They sat on the balcony as night fell over Rome, the city transforming into a constellation of lights. You don't have to do this, Richard said finally. We'll find another way. We'll figure something out. There is no other way, Dad. You heard him. Then let him kill me. I'm the one who made this mess. It should be me who pays for it. Lena closed her eyes. I can't watch you die. And I can't watch you sacrifice yourself for my mistakes. Then don't watch. The words came out harsher than intended. Go home. Rebuild. Live the life I'm buying for you. Lena, I mean it. She turned to face him, tears finally spilling over. If I do this, you don't get to waste it. You don't get to drown in guilt or drink yourself to death. You sell the business, you pay off whatever legitimate debts are left, and you start over. You live. Because that's the only thing that makes this bearable. Richard pulled her into his arms. They held each other as Lena cried, for her mother who wasn't here to stop this, for the future she'd imagined at Columbia, for the girl she'd been just 24 hours ago when the world still made sense. When the tears finally stopped, she felt empty, hollowed out, but also strangely clear. I need to sleep, she said. Alone. Her father kissed her forehead. I love you. More than anything in this world. I know. After he left, Lena stood at the balcony for a long time, watching Rome breathe beneath her. Somewhere in that ancient city, people were living normal lives, eating dinner, watching television, planning their futures. She'd been one of them, once. Now she was something else, a commodity, a solution, a bride for sale. She went inside and locked the balcony doors, as though that could keep out the decision waiting for her. The bed was impossibly soft, the sheets smelling of lavender. Lena lay in the darkness, staring at frescoes she couldn't see. Sleep should have been impossible, but exhaustion claimed her anyway, pulling her under into dreams of marble corridors that twisted endlessly, always leading back to the same room, the same desk, the same dark eyes watching her with patient inevitability. Morning arrived with cruel brightness. Lena woke to find a dress laid out on the sitting room sofa. Simple, elegant, far more expensive than anything in her suitcase. A note in elegant script. For this afternoon. M. She showered, dressed in her own clothes out of spite, and waited. At precisely 2 o'clock, a guard knocked. Don DeLuca will see you now. The walk to the study felt like a funeral procession. Lena's legs moved mechanically, carrying her toward a future she didn't choose but couldn't escape. The villa's beauty mocked her. All this wealth, all this power, and she had none of it. Marcello stood at the windows again, though this time he turned immediately when she entered. He'd changed into a navy suit, his silver hair catching the light. Those dark eyes settled on her face with unnerving intensity. Miss Brooks. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Please. And this time, Lena sat. Have you decided? Her hands clenched in her lap. Every cell in her body screamed to refuse, to fight, to spit in his face. But Richard's broken expression haunted her. The memory of her father's voice. Let him kill me. She couldn't. I want everything in writing, Lena said, her voice steadier than she felt. legal documents guaranteeing my father's safety and the complete erasure of his debt. I want them reviewed by a lawyer of my choosing before I sign anything. Of course. Marcello's expression revealed nothing. What else? I want access to education. If I'm going to be trapped here, I'm not going to be ignorant. I want tutors, books, the ability to continue learning. Easily provided. I want communication with my father, regular calls, emails, proof that he's actually safe. For the first 6 months, monitored communication. After that, at my discretion. Lena's jaw tightened. That is the offer, Miss Brooks. Take it or leave it. She wanted to scream. Instead, she forced herself to breathe, to think tactically. 6 months was better than nothing. And if she played this right, if she could survive long enough to understand Marcello's world, maybe she could find leverage later. Fine. 6 months. Marcello pulled a document from his desk drawer. This is a prenuptial agreement outlining the terms we've discussed. You will read it carefully. You will have until tomorrow to decide if these terms are acceptable. I don't need until tomorrow. Lena's voice was ice. I've already made my decision. Nevertheless, Marcello slid the document across to her. You will take the time. Marriage, Miss Brooks, even under these circumstances, should not be entered lightly. You're lecturing me about treating marriage seriously? Disbelief cracked through her composure. You're blackmailing me into marrying you. I am offering you a choice between difficult options, Marcello corrected. There is a difference. The hell there is. For a long moment, they stared at each other across the desk. The air between them crackled with tension, Lena's fury meeting Marcello's implacable calm. She wanted to see something in his eyes, some hint of conscience or doubt. But there was nothing except that steady, assessing gaze. Finally, Marcello stood. Your father will be allowed to stay until the wedding. Afterward, he will be escorted to the airport and flown first class to New York. A security detail will ensure his safe arrival. Once he lands, our business is concluded. How generous! The sarcasm dripped like acid. It is, actually. Marcello's voice hardened slightly. Many in my position would not be so accommodating. Your father betrayed a trust, Miss Brooks. In my world, that typically carries only one penalty. Then why are you doing this? Really? Lena stood, needing to face him on her feet. You could have anyone. Why force someone who hates you into marriage? Marcello was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his words were measured. I told you I need an heir, a legitimate family, but I also need someone strong enough to survive in my world, someone who will not break under pressure. His gaze locked with hers. You are furious, terrified, trapped. And yet here you stand, negotiating terms instead of begging for mercy. You have a spine, Miss Brooks. That is rare. That is valuable. The compliment, if it could be called that, made her skin crawl. I'm not strong. I'm cornered. There is strength in survival. Marcello moved to the door, opening it. You will have your answer tomorrow. Until then, the villa is open to you. Explore. Become familiar with your new home. Lena left without another word. Us. The villa revealed itself in layers over the following hours. Lena walked corridors lined with art worth millions, through rooms designed for entertaining dozens of guests, past armed men who watched her with professional detachment. She found a library that could rival a university's collection, a wine cellar carved into the bedrock beneath the villa, gardens that seemed to stretch forever. It was beautiful. It was a prison. She ended up in the chapel, a small room on the ground floor with stained glass windows depicting scenes from Roman history rather than religious iconography. Even here, Marcello's influence showed. No crosses, no saints, just power and conquest rendered in colored glass. It's unusual, isn't it? Lena spun. Marcello stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets. Without the desk between them, she could see how tall he was, at least 6'2", broad-shouldered, despite his age. He moved into the chapel with the comfortable ease of someone who belonged everywhere. Most Italian villas have Catholic chapels, he continued, gesturing to the windows. But I prefer history to theology. I didn't ask for a tour guide. No, but you received one anyway. Marcello stopped a respectful distance away. This villa has been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather built it with money from olive oil and wine. Legitimate businesses then. A pause. It was my father who changed the nature of our work. I don't care about your family history. You should. Marcello's voice was gentle but firm. You will be part of this family soon. These halls will be yours to walk. This history will become your history. Lena's hands clenched. This will never be my home. Give it time. Time won't change the fact that I'm here against my will. Marcello studied her with that unsettling focus. You are here because you chose to be. You could have said no and watched my father die. That's not a choice. It is the only choice that matters, Marcello said quietly. In the end, we are all defined by what we are willing to sacrifice. You sacrificed your freedom for your father's life. That speaks well of your character, Miss Brooks. Be proud of it. The words hit like a slap. Lena turned away, blinking back tears she refused to let him see. Get out. This is my home. Then I'll leave. She pushed past him, practically running from the chapel. His voice followed her. Tomorrow, Miss Brooks. Your answer. So, that night, Lena barely slept. She paced the suite, reading and rereading the prenuptial agreement. The terms were exactly as discussed. Father's debt erased, guaranteed safety, monitored communication for 6 months. There were clauses about property, inheritance, fidelity. Her signature on this document would bind her legally to a man she'd known for less than 48 hours. A man who terrified her. Not because he was cruel or violent, he'd been nothing but calm and courteous, but because he was effective. Because when Marcello De Luca wanted something, he obtained it, and now he wanted her. Morning arrived like an execution date. Lena dressed in the clothes she'd worn to Rome, jeans and a sweater, armor of normalcy. She met her father for breakfast in her suite. Richard looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. I'll fight him, he said desperately. We'll find a lawyer, Dad! Lena's voice was quiet. It's done. Richard's face crumpled. Lena, I need you to promise me something. She took his hands. Promise me you'll actually live, that you won't waste the chance I'm giving you. How can I live knowing what you've sacrificed? You don't have a choice. Lena's grip tightened. This only works if you make it mean something. So promise me. Through tears, Richard promised. At 2 o'clock, Lena walked to the study for the last time as a free woman. Marcello waited at his desk, the prenuptial agreement laid out. Beside it, a pen. Your decision, Miss Brooks? Lena looked at the document, at the man who held her father's life in his hands, at the future she was about to sign away. She picked up the pen. Where do I sign? The ink dried before Lena could change her mind. Marcello took the signed document, examining her signature with the same careful attention he gave everything else. His expression revealed nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just that maddening calm that made Lena want to scream. The wedding will be Friday, he said, sliding the prenuptial agreement into a leather portfolio. 4 days from now. My staff will handle the arrangements. 4 days? Lena's voice cracked. That's not enough time to... Enough time for what, Miss Brooks? To reconsider? To run? Marcello's dark eyes met hers. The decision is made. Delaying serves no purpose. He was right, and she hated him for it. Lena stood abruptly, needing distance from the desk, from him, from the suffocating reality of what she'd just done. What happens to my father? He will attend the wedding. Afterward, as agreed, he will be escorted home. Marcello rose from his chair with fluid grace. Until then, he remains my guest. Your prisoner, you mean? My guest, Marcello repeated firmly. He will be treated with courtesy. As will you. He moved toward the door, then paused. A seamstress will arrive this afternoon to fit you for a wedding dress. I've taken the liberty of hiring someone who speaks English. How thoughtful. The sarcasm felt like her only weapon. Something flickered across Marcello's face. Amusement, maybe, or patience wearing thin. You have every right to be angry, Miss Brooks, but direct that anger productively. You're about to become my wife. That position carries certain expectations. Like what? Smiling while you parade me around like property? like understanding the world you are entering. Marcello's voice dropped, taking on an edge she hadn't heard before. I run an organization that controls shipping routes, construction contracts, and political influence across 3 continents. My enemies would kill for the opportunity to exploit weakness, and a wife who cannot navigate that reality is a liability I cannot afford. The implicit threat chilled her. So what do you expect me to do? Learn. Marcello opened the door. Starting tomorrow, you will have tutors, Italian language, history, etiquette. You will also begin self-defense training. Self-defense? Lena stared at him. Why would I need? Because knowledge is survival in my world, and I prefer my wife alive. He said it matter-of-factly, as though discussing the weather. Your first lesson is at 9 tomorrow morning. I suggest you rest. Then he was gone, leaving Lena alone with the crushing weight of her new reality. The seamstress arrived precisely at 4 o'clock, a compact Italian woman named Giulia who spoke perfect English with a British accent. She swept into Lena's suite with an assistant carrying fabric samples and a measuring tape, all business despite the circumstances. Don DeLuca has excellent taste, Giulia announced, spreading swatches of silk and lace across the sitting room sofa. He's requested something elegant but understated, nothing too virginal. He was quite specific about that. Heat flooded Lena's face. He actually said that? His exact words were, "No white dress that makes her look like a sacrifice." Giulia's lips quirked. Though between you and me, Cara, I've seen many brides in this villa over the years. You're the first one he's actually marrying. Lena went still. What do you mean? Giulia caught herself, suddenly cautious. Nothing, just gossip. Now, let me see you. But the damage was done. As Giulia measured and pinned, Lena's mind churned. How many women had Marcello brought here before her? How many had stood in this suite, wearing dresses Giulia created, believing themselves special? Arms up, please. Giulia's tape measure encircled Lena's waist. You're very slender. We'll need to add structure to the bodice. I don't care what it looks like. Perhaps not, but Don DeLuca does. Giulia stepped back, studying Lena with a professional eye. He's hosting 200 guests for this wedding. Important people. Dangerous people. They will be watching you, judging whether you're worthy of standing beside him. I'm not standing beside him by choice. No, Giulia agreed quietly, but you're standing beside him nonetheless. So we make sure you look like you belong there. The dress took shape over 2 hours of fitting, champagne silk that caught the light like liquid gold, with a neckline that managed to be both modest and elegant. Giulia worked in focused silence, her pins precise, her hands gentle. There. She stepped back finally. Look. Lena had been avoiding the mirror. Now she forced herself to turn. The woman reflected there looked nothing like the college student who'd boarded a plane to Rome 5 days ago. This woman was sophisticated, almost regal, the dress transforming her into someone who could believably marry a man like Marcello DeLuca. Lena hated her. It's perfect, Giulia said softly. You'll be beautiful, Cara. I'll be his. The words tasted like ashes. Giulia began unpinning the dress with practiced efficiency. When she spoke again, her voice was careful. May I give you advice? Woman to woman. Lena met her eyes in the mirror. Would it matter if I said no? Probably not. A small smile. Don DeLuca is not a gentle man, but he is not cruel without cause. If you are smart, if you learn what he teaches you, you might find this life more bearable than you think. And if I'm not smart? If I fight him? Giulia's hand stilled on the fabric. Then you will lose, Cara. You will always lose. Men like him, they do not bend. That night, Lena lay awake replaying those words. Men like him do not bend. She'd seen that truth already, in Marcello's unwavering calm, his absolute certainty, the way he'd maneuvered her into a corner with surgical precision. But if he didn't bend, what did that make her? Just another possession in his collection of beautiful things? Morning arrived too quickly. A guard knocked at 8:30 to escort her to breakfast. Lena had expected to eat alone, but when she entered the dining room, Marcello was already there, reading a newspaper over espresso. He stood when she entered, old-world courtesy that would have been charming under different circumstances. Miss Brooks, please join me. The table could have seated 20, but settings had been placed at one end, forcing proximity. Lena took the chair indicated, hyper-aware of Marcello's presence beside her. A servant appeared with a silver coffee pot. Marcello spoke to him in rapid Italian, then turned to Lena. "How do you take your coffee?" "I don't need you to order for me." Nevertheless, he waited, patient as stone. "Black, no sugar." Marcello relayed this, then added something that made the servant nod and disappear. "I've asked for pastries as well. You barely ate yesterday. You'll need strength for your training." About that, Lena wrapped her hands around the coffee cup when it arrived, needing something to hold. "Why exactly do I need self-defense lessons? You have an army of guards. Guards can be killed, betrayed, bought." Marcello set down his newspaper. "But a woman who can defend herself, that is an asset no one can take away. Or maybe you just want to control another aspect of my life." "If I wanted control, Miss Brooks, I would simply give orders." His voice was mild, but something in his eyes sharpened. "I'm offering you tools. What you do with them is your choice." The servant returned with a platter of pastries. Cornetti, sfogliatelle, things Lena had no names for. Her stomach growled traitorously despite her anger. "Eat," Marcello said. It wasn't quite a command, but close enough. Lena took a cornetto purely out of spite. If she was going to be forced into submission, at least she could do it on a full stomach. The pastry was buttery and perfect, dissolving on her tongue. Marcello watched her with that unreadable expression. "Your tutor will be Marco Esposito. He's trained security personnel for 20 years. He's also discreet and professional. And if I refuse to train, then you will be vulnerable, and I will be disappointed." Marcello's tone suggested the latter consequence was somehow worse. But the choice, as always, is yours. They ate in tense silence. Lena tried not to notice the way Marcello moved. Economical, precise, nothing wasted. Even something as simple as cutting fruit seemed deliberate with him, as though every action had been calculated for maximum efficiency. "You're staring," he observed without looking up. Heat flooded her cheeks. "I'm trying to figure you out." "And what have you concluded?" "That you're either completely insane or the most calculating person I've ever met." Marcello's lips curved, almost a smile. "Those are not mutually exclusive." Before Lena could respond, the dining room door opened. A man entered, late 30s, built like a boxer, with kind eyes that seemed at odds with his scarred knuckles. Don DeLuca. He inclined his head respectfully before turning to Lena. "Miss Brooks, I'm Marco Esposito. I'll be your instructor." Marcello stood. "Marco will train you 3 times a week. Today is an assessment. He needs to understand your current capabilities." "My current capabilities are 0. Lena didn't move from her chair. "I've never thrown a punch in my life." "Then today you'll learn." Marcello gestured to Marco. "She's yours. Don't go easy on her." Marco's expression suggested he'd never gone easy on anyone. "Miss Brooks, if you'll come with me." The training room was in the villa's basement, a converted wine cellar with padded floors and walls lined with equipment. Punching bags hung from reinforced beams. A weapons rack held everything from practice knives to staffs. It looked like a place where serious violence was taught. Marco handed her athletic clothes, leggings, and a fitted shirt. "Change behind that screen. We'll start with basics." When Lena emerged, Marco had stripped down to a tank top that revealed arms roped with muscle. He gestured to the center of the mat. "First lesson, stance. Show me how you stand when you're afraid." "What?" "Right now you're afraid of Don DeLuca, of me, of this situation." Marco's voice was matter-of-fact. "Show me your body's natural response." Lena's hands clenched. "This is ridiculous." "Show me." Maybe it was the way he said it. No judgment, just professional expectation. But Lena found herself demonstrating. Her shoulders hunched forward, her weight shifted back, every muscle tightened defensively. Marco circled her. "Classic fear response. Makes you small, protects vital organs. Also makes you an easy target." He adjusted her shoulders with firm hands. "Stand straight, feet shoulder width, weight balanced." "I feel exposed." "Good. Fear makes us hide, confidence makes us visible." Marco stepped back. Now someone grabs you from behind. What do you do? I don't know. Scream? Screaming is good, but what if no one's coming? Before Lena could answer, Marco moved behind her, his arm loose around her shoulders. Think fast. How do you escape? Panic spiked through her. Lena struggled instinctively, pulling against his hold. Stop. Marco released her immediately. You're fighting blind. Using strength you don't have against an opponent who's bigger than you. That's how you lose. He reset his position. Try again, but this time think about anatomy. Where am I vulnerable? Lena's mind raced. Your eyes? Good. Where else? Throat? Groin? Excellent. So if I grab you, Marco's arm came around her again. You don't pull away. You attack. He guided her elbow back toward his ribs, hard and fast, then you run. They drilled the movement 20 times, 30. Lena's muscles burned, sweat soaking through her shirt, but Marco was relentless. Again, faster. You're not trying to win a fight, Miss Brooks. You're creating opportunity to escape. By the time Marco called a break, Lena was shaking with exhaustion. She collapsed against the wall, gulping water from the bottle he offered. You did well, Marco said. Better than I expected. I couldn't even break your hold. No, but you learned the principle. That's what matters. Marco sat beside her, close enough for conversation, but maintaining respectful distance. Don DeLuca asked me to train you seriously. That means I won't coddle you. It will be hard. You'll be sore. But you'll be capable. Why does he care? The question burst out before Lena could stop it. Why go through all this trouble? Marco was quiet for a moment. I've worked for Don DeLuca for 12 years. In that time, I've never seen him bring a woman to this villa the way he's brought you. Make of that what you will. Julia said something similar, that I'm the first one he's actually marrying. Then perhaps you're special. Marco stood, offering his hand to pull her up. Or perhaps he's finally thinking about legacy. Either way, he's investing in you. The question is what you'll do with that investment. The question haunted Lena through the shower afterward, through lunch eaten alone in her suite, through the afternoon when another tutor arrived, this one for Italian. His name was Professor Adami, a distinguished man in his 70s who spoke English with Oxford precision. Don DeLuca has requested an accelerated program, he explained, settling into the sitting room with textbooks and audio materials. We'll focus on conversational fluency first. You'll need to understand what's being said around you. Why? So I can know when people are insulting me to my face? Professor Adami's lips twitched. Among other reasons. Shall we begin? Italian was harder than Lena expected. All those rolling R's and vowel sounds her Connecticut mouth struggled to shape. But Professor Adami was patient, correcting her pronunciation with gentle firmness. Buongiorno, Lena repeated. Mi chiamo Lena. Better. Again. They worked for 2 hours. Basic greetings, common phrases, numbers. By the end, Lena's brain felt stuffed with new information, her tongue thick with unfamiliar syllables. You have an ear for language, Professor Adami observed, packing his materials. With practice, you'll be fluent within 6 months. Lucky me. Indeed. The old man paused at the door. If I may offer advice, Miss Brooks, learn everything Don DeLuca teaches you, not because he demands it, but because knowledge is the only power that truly belongs to you. After he left, Lena stood on the balcony watching the sun set over Rome. The city glowed amber and rose, ancient and eternal, indifferent to the drama playing out in one villa among thousands. Tomorrow was Thursday. The day after, she would marry a stranger. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, Lena felt oddly numb, as though she'd used up all her fear and had nothing left but hollow acceptance. A knock at the door. A servant in formal livery stood there holding a garment bag. From Don DeLuca, signorina. For dinner tonight. What dinner? He requests your presence at 8 o'clock. The dining room. Before Lena could protest, the servant was gone. She unzipped the garment bag to find a dress. Simple black silk that would hit just above her knees, with a neckline that was modest but elegant. Shoes to match. Even jewelry. A delicate gold necklace with a single pearl. Marcello was dressing her like a doll. Lena wanted to refuse, to show up in her jeans and ratty sweater just to spite him. But something, maybe pride, maybe curiosity, made her put on the dress instead. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. At 8 o'clock precisely, a guard escorted her downstairs. The dining room had been transformed, candles lit, the table set for two with china and crystal that probably cost more than a car. Marcello stood at the window, wearing a black suit that made him look like he'd stepped from a vintage photograph. He turned when she entered, and something crossed his face too quickly to identify. "Miss Brooks, you look lovely." "I look like whatever you wanted me to look like." "Perhaps, but the result is lovely nonetheless." Marcello pulled out her chair. "Please." Lena sat, hyper-aware of the intimacy of the setting. This wasn't a business meeting. This was... She didn't know what this was. Marcello took the seat across from her. A servant appeared with wine, red, expensive-looking. Marcello poured for both of them. "I wanted to discuss tomorrow's schedule. There are several people you'll need to meet before the wedding." "People?" "Associates. Family, of a sort." Marcello swirled his wine. "They'll want to see you to understand who you are." "You mean they'll want to judge whether I'm worthy of you?" "Yes. No apology, no softening, just honesty. This marriage will be scrutinized. Some will see you as weak, a girl I'm using to solve a debt. Others will see opportunity, a way to manipulate me through you. You need to understand both threats." The first course arrived, some kind of soup with truffle oil that smelled incredible. Lena's stomach growled despite her nerves. "Eat," Marcello said gently. "We can discuss business over food." It felt surreal sitting here with him like this was a normal dinner date instead of a captor dining with his prisoner. But Lena picked up her spoon, if only because starving herself wouldn't change anything. The soup was exquisite. "Marco said you did well today," Marcello offered. "He was impressed by your focus." "I didn't have much choice." "You always have a choice, Miss Brooks. You could have refused, made the lesson difficult. Instead, you learned." Marcello's dark eyes met hers. "That suggests intelligence. Or survival instinct. Often the same thing." Marcello set down his spoon. "Tomorrow morning, my cousin Sophia will arrive. She's difficult, but influential. I need you to make a good impression." "What does that mean?" "It means be yourself, but with discretion. Sophia will test you, ask invasive questions, try to provoke a reaction. Don't give her one." Lena's hands tightened on her wine glass. "And if I fail your cousin's test?" "Then she'll spread rumors that my new wife is weak. Those rumors will reach my enemies, and they will act accordingly." Marcello said it calmly, as though describing weather patterns instead of life-threatening consequences. "You're asking me to perform. I'm asking you to survive." Marcello leaned forward slightly. "I told you, you're entering a world where perception is reality. If my associates believe you're strong, they'll respect you. If they believe you're vulnerable, they'll exploit you. The choice of which narrative they see is partially yours." "Partially?" "I'll do my part, but you must do yours." The main course arrived, lamb so tender it fell apart under her fork, with vegetables Lena couldn't name but tasted like they'd been harvested that morning. They ate in tense silence, the weight of tomorrow's expectations pressing down like a physical force. Finally, Lena set down her fork. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why a wedding? If all you needed was an heir, why not just, I don't know, artificial insemination, a business arrangement without the ceremony?" Marcello was quiet for a long moment, his wine glass turning slowly in his hand. "Because legitimacy matters in my world. A wife carries weight that a mistress or surrogate never could. And because..." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Because I am old enough to know that legacy is more than blood. It is tradition, history. A marriage, even one like ours, carries those things forward." That's a very romantic way of describing blackmail. "I've never claimed to be romantic, Miss Brooks. Only practical." Dessert was panna cotta with berries. Lena ate mechanically, her mind churning. Tomorrow she would meet Marcello's cousin. The day after, she would marry him. And then what? What was her life supposed to look like after she became Mrs. Marcello de Luca? As though reading her thoughts, Marcello spoke. "After the wedding, there will be a reception here at the villa. 200 guests. You'll stand beside me, meet my associates, smile appropriately. Think of it as theater, with my father watching. Yes. That's cruel. That's life. Marcello's voice softened slightly. Your father agreed to attend. He wants to see you safely married before he leaves. Safely? Bitterness leaked through. There's nothing safe about this. Safer than the alternative. Marcello stood, moving to her chair. He offered his hand. Come. I want to show you something. Every instinct screamed not to take his hand, but curiosity won out. Lena let him pull her to her feet, following as he led her through the villa's corridors. They climbed stairs to the 3rd floor, then higher, to a 4th level Lena hadn't known existed. Marcello unlocked a door with an old-fashioned key, revealing a narrow staircase. Where are we going? Up. The stairs ended in a small room, more of a cupola really, with windows on all sides. Rome spread out below them in a carpet of lights, the city glowing against the darkness. This was my grandfather's study, Marcello said quietly. When he couldn't sleep, he'd come here to look at what he'd built, his empire, such as it was then. Lena moved to the window. The view was breathtaking, every monument lit, every street a river of light. It's beautiful. It's power. Marcello stood beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. Every light down there represents someone living their life, working, loving, fighting. Most have no idea that their lives are shaped by decisions made in rooms like the one where you signed our agreement. That's terrifying. That's reality. Marcello turned to face her. In the dim light, his features seemed softer somehow, less imposing. I wanted you to see this, to understand the scale of what you're entering. Why? Because knowledge is preparation, and I prefer my wife prepared. There was that word again, wife. It still didn't feel real. Lena studied Marcello's profile, the strong nose, the hard line of his jaw. Do you ever regret it? The life you've built? Every day. The admission surprised her. But regret doesn't change what is, only what will be. Deep philosophy from a crime boss. Crime boss, businessman, husband, these are just roles we play, Miss Brooks. Underneath, we're all just people trying to survive with some measure of dignity intact. Lena laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. I have no dignity left. You took that when you forced me into this marriage. Did I? Marcello's dark eyes pinned her. Or did you make an impossible choice with the dignity of someone willing to sacrifice herself for someone she loves? There's nobility in that, even if you can't see it yet. Don't. Lena's voice cracked. Don't try to make this noble. You're still the villain in this story. Perhaps. Marcello stepped back, giving her space. But you're the one who will write the ending. Remember that. He left her there in his grandfather's study, surrounded by glass and light, and the empire he'd built on choices just as impossible as the one she'd made. Lena stayed until the tears finally came, silent, exhausting, the grief she'd been holding back since signing her name on that damned contract. She cried for the life she'd lost, for the future she'd imagined, for the girl who'd gotten on a plane to Rome believing she was helping her father save a business. That girl was gone. In her place stood someone else. Someone harder. Someone who would have to learn to survive in a world built on violence and power. Someone who would become Marcello De Luca's wife in less than 48 hours. When the tears finally stopped, Lena dried her face and descended the stairs. A guard waited to escort her back to her suite, his expression professionally blank. He'd probably heard her crying. Probably reported it to Marcello already. Let him know. Let him see exactly what he'd bought with his blackmail and his impossible choices. Back in her suite, Lena found new items laid out on the bed. Books in Italian and English, a leather journal, expensive pens, a note in Marcello's handwriting, for your studies and your thoughts. She wanted to throw them all off the balcony. Instead, she opened the journal and began to write. Day 6 in Rome. Tomorrow I meet the family. Friday I become a wife. And I still don't know if I'll survive this with any part of myself intact. The pen moved across the page, unburdening thoughts too dangerous to speak aloud. Lena wrote until her hand cramped, until exhaustion finally pulled her under into dreams of light-filled cities and dark eyes that saw everything. When morning came, she would face whatever test Marcello's cousin had prepared. But tonight, in this moment, She was still just Lena Brooks, even if that version of herself was disappearing a little more with each passing hour. Sofia De Luca arrived like a storm wrapped in Versace. Lena heard her before she saw her, sharp heels clicking against marble, rapid Italian echoing through the villa's corridors, followed by Marcello's lower tones attempting to interject. The sound grew louder, closer, until the sitting room door burst open without a knock. The woman who entered was perhaps 45, beautiful in the way expensive maintenance and good genes combined to create. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant chignon, her makeup flawless, her burgundy dress cut to show off a figure that clearly saw regular Pilates sessions. Diamond studs glinted at her ears, each probably worth more than Lena's childhood home. But it was Sofia's eyes that made Lena's stomach clench, dark like Marcello's, but where his held calculation, hers held judgment. So, Sofia stopped 3 feet from where Lena stood, looking her up and down with the critical assessment of someone examining produce at a market. "This is the girl." Marcello entered behind her, his expression tight. "Sofia, we discussed—" "Oh, hush, Marcello. Let me look at her properly." Sofia circled Lena like a shark scenting blood. "She's pretty enough, I suppose. Painfully young. Like dressing lamb as mutton, don't you think?" "Careful," Marcello warned quietly. Sofia waved him off, switching to English with barely a trace of accent. "Can you speak, girl? Or are you just decorative?" Every muscle in Lena's body tensed. She remembered Marcello's warning from last night. Sofia would test her, try to provoke a reaction. Don't give her one. But standing here being inspected like livestock made rage bubble up her throat. "I can speak," Lena said, keeping her voice level. "Though I'm not sure you'd listen even if I did." Sofia's eyebrows rose. Behind her, Marcello's expression shifted. Was that approval? "Oh, she has teeth," Sofia laughed, a sharp sound without much humor. "Good. You'll need them." She settled onto the sofa without being invited, crossing her legs with practiced elegance. "Sit, both of you. We have things to discuss." Marcello gestured for Lena to take the chair opposite Sofia. He remained standing, positioned slightly behind Lena, protective or controlling, she couldn't tell which. "I assume my cousin has explained our family's position," Sofia began, pulling out a cigarette case. She lit one without asking permission. "We are not merely wealthy, Cara. We are legacy. 5 generations of De Lucas have held power in this city. Do you understand what that means?" "It means you have a lot to protect," Lena said carefully. "Precisely." Sofia blew smoke toward the ceiling. And now Marcello wants to bring an outsider into that legacy. An American girl with no connections, no understanding of our world, no useful skills beyond being young and presumably fertile. "Sofia." Marcello's voice carried warning. "What? I'm simply stating facts." Sofia's gaze never left Lena. "Tell me, girl, what exactly do you bring to this marriage besides a father's debt?" The question was designed to humiliate. Lena could see it in the cruel curve of Sofia's smile, in the way she held herself like someone who'd never been contradicted in her life. Everything Marcello had told her crystallized in that moment. This wasn't about approval. This was about establishing dominance. Lena leaned forward. "I bring survival instinct. I bring the ability to make impossible choices under pressure. And I bring enough sense not to be intimidated by someone who needs to tear others down to feel powerful." The room went very still. Sofia's cigarette paused halfway to her lips. For a long moment, she simply stared at Lena, her expression unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. A real laugh this time, surprised and almost delighted. "Well," Sofia stubbed out her cigarette, "perhaps you're not completely useless after all." She stood, smoothing her dress. "Marcello, might I speak with you privately? Anything you need to say can be said here." "Fine." Sofia's tone turned crisp, businesslike. "The Rossini family has questions about this marriage. Specifically, they want to know if it represents a shift in our alliances. I told them to wait for the reception to draw their own conclusions, but they're nervous." "Let them be nervous," Marcello said. "Uncertainty keeps people cautious. It also makes them unpredictable." Sofia pulled out her phone, scrolling through messages. "Antonio Rossini wants a meeting before the wedding. Just you, him, and his son. Neutral ground. Absolutely not. Marcello's voice went hard. I'm not leaving the villa with a wedding in 2 days. Then bring the meeting here. Show confidence. Sophia glanced at Lena. Bring your bride-to-be. Let them see you're not hiding her away like a shameful secret. Lena's pulse jumped. Wait, I'm supposed to meet these people? The Rossinis control shipping throughout southern Italy, Sophia explained, not unkindly. They've worked with our family for 30 years. If they think this marriage weakens Marcello's position, they might look for other partnerships. How would marrying me weaken his position? Because it suggests he's becoming sentimental, emotional. Sophia said the words like they were diseases. In our world, sentiment is vulnerability, and vulnerable men don't last long. Marcello moved to the window, his posture tense. Set up the meeting for tonight. Dinner here. But Lena is not performing for Antonio Rossini's benefit. She won't have to perform, Sophia said. Just exist. Look pretty. Don't faint or cry or do anything that suggests she can't handle being a DeLuca. I'm right here, Lena said sharply. Stop talking about me like I'm not in the room. Sophia turned, and this time her smile held something that might have been respect. You're right. My apologies. She addressed Lena directly. Can you sit through a dinner with some very dangerous, very judgmental men without falling apart? I've been sitting through this conversation with you, haven't I? Sophia laughed again. I like her, Marcello. She's got spine. She headed for the door, pausing at the threshold. 7 o'clock tonight. Wear something that says, I belong here, but not so sexy that Antonio gets ideas. He's a pig when he drinks. With that, she swept out, leaving a wake of expensive perfume and tension. Lena let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Well, that was terrifying. You did well. Marcello's voice held approval. Sophia respects strength. You showed her strength. I showed her anger. Often the same thing. Marcello moved to sit where Sophia had been. Tonight will be more difficult. The Rossinis are not family. They're business partners who smell blood in the water. You'll need to be perfect. I don't know how to be perfect in your world. Then be yourself, but controlled. Marcello leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. Antonio will probe for weakness. His son, Paolo, will likely try to flirt. Ignore him. They'll speak in Italian, testing whether you understand. Don't react to anything you hear. But I don't speak Italian well enough to. Which is why you'll smile politely and let me handle the conversation. Your job is simply to exist beside me without showing fear. Lena's hands clenched in her lap. This is insane. I shouldn't have to audition to be your wife. You're not auditioning. You're establishing your place. Marcello's voice softened slightly. I know this is difficult, but after tonight, after the wedding, things will become easier. The questions will fade. You'll simply be Mrs. DeLuca, and that title carries its own protection. Or its own target. That too. He didn't deny it. Which is why your training continues. Marco said you have a session at 2 o'clock. The rest of the day blurred past in a haze of preparation. Marco drilled her on escape techniques until her muscles screamed. Professor Adami arrived for Italian lessons, focusing on phrases she might need tonight. Polite greetings, gracious responses, ways to deflect conversation without causing offense. Julia returned with the wedding dress for final adjustments, pinning and repinning until every seam was perfect. Through it all, Lena felt like she was being assembled piece by piece into someone new. Someone who could sit through dinner with crime lords and smile. Someone who could marry a man old enough to be her grandfather and pretend it was normal. By 6 o'clock, she was exhausted and terrified. The dress Marcello had chosen for tonight appeared in her suite at 6:30. Midnight blue silk that hugged her figure without being provocative, with a neckline that managed to be both elegant and modest. The jewelry that accompanied it was simpler than she'd expected, just pearl earrings and a delicate bracelet. Lena dressed mechanically, her hands shaking only slightly. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The girl staring back looked sophisticated, composed, like someone who belonged at a crime lord's dinner table. The illusion was perfect. A knock at 7 sharp. Marcello stood in the corridor, wearing a charcoal suit that made him look even more imposing than usual. His eyes swept over her, and something flickered in their depths, approval, maybe, or satisfaction. Perfect, he said simply. Then he offered his arm. Ready? No? Good. Honesty is important. His lips curved slightly. The Rossinis are already here. They arrived early. A power play, trying to catch us unprepared. We'll make them wait 5 more minutes. They stood in the corridor, Lena's hand resting on Marcello's arm, while he checked his watch with maddening calm. The physical contact felt strange. His arm was solid under her fingers, warm through the expensive fabric of his suit. Remember, Marcello said quietly, you are my choice. Act like it. Before Lena could ask what that meant, he was moving, leading her down the stairs to the formal dining room where her performance would begin. The Rossini men stood as they entered, 3 of them, each radiating different flavors of dangerous. Antonio Rossini was in his 60s, thick-bodied and barrel-chested, with a face that had been handsome once before too much wine and violence had weathered it. His son Paolo was perhaps 30, lean and sharp-featured, with eyes that tracked Lena like a predator watching prey. The third man was younger, maybe mid-20s, introduced only as Cousin Luca, silent and watchful. Marcello! Antonio's voice boomed across the room. He approached with arms spread, embracing Marcello like an old friend despite the tension crackling in the air. You devil! Getting married and only telling us a week before? Some decisions don't require committee approval, Antonio. Marcello's tone was light, but his body language stayed guarded. This is my fiancée, Lena Brooks. Antonio's attention swung to her like a spotlight. His eyes traveled slowly from her face down her body and back up, assessing, invasive. American? Marcello, you surprise me. I thought you preferred our Italian girls. I prefer intelligence and strength, Marcello said evenly. Miss Brooks has both. Paolo stepped forward, taking Lena's hand before she could pull it back. He kissed it theatrically, his lips lingering too long. A pleasure, signorina. My father is right. You are very beautiful. Lena forced a smile, remembering Marcello's warning. Don't react. Don't show weakness. Thank you. They moved to the table, Marcello guiding Lena to the seat beside him. Antonio took the chair across from them, with Paolo to his right and Luca at the end. Servants appeared with wine, with appetizers, with the careful orchestration of a meal designed to impress. Antonio raised his glass. To unexpected marriages and beautiful brides. They drank. The wine was excellent, which somehow made the whole situation more surreal. Lena took a small sip, hyper-aware of 3 sets of male eyes watching her every movement. So, Miss Brooks, Antonio began, settling back in his chair. Tell me how you met our Marcello. It must be quite a story. This was the first test. Lena glanced at Marcello, but his expression gave her nothing. She was on her own. We met through business, she said carefully. My father and Don DeLuca had dealings. We were introduced during negotiations. How romantic. Paolo's tone suggested he found it anything but. And you fell in love instantly, I suppose? I fell in love with Rome, Lena said, which was not quite a lie. The city is beautiful. The rest followed. Antonio laughed. Diplomatic answer. You trained her well, Marcello. I didn't train her. She came this way. Marcello's hand found Lena's under the table, squeezing once. Reassurance or warning, she couldn't tell. The conversation continued in this vein through the first course, Antonio probing with increasingly personal questions while Paolo watched Lena with unsettling intensity. They switched periodically to Italian, testing her as Marcello had predicted. Lena kept her expression neutral, pretending not to understand the rapid-fire exchanges about territory disputes and shipping routes. But then Antonio said something that made Marcello's hand tighten on hers. Paolo laughed. Luca's expression didn't change. Lena caught only one word. Sostituzione. Replacement. Were they talking about replacing Marcello? Or replacing her? She forced herself to take another sip of wine, to smile as though nothing was wrong, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. You know, Marcello, Antonio said, switching back to English, there are concerns about this marriage, about what it means for our arrangements. What concerns? Marcello's voice went cold. People wonder if you're losing your edge, getting soft in your old age. Antonio gestured with his wine glass. Taking a wife? Thinking about children? These are not the actions of a man focused on business. These are the actions of a man building a legacy. Or a man who's vulnerable. Paolo leaned forward. A wife can be leveraged, Don DeLuca. A liability. Are you certain you've thought this through? The threat was barely veiled. Lena felt it like a blade against her throat. But before Marcello could respond, she found herself speaking. May I ask a question? All three Rossini men turned to her. Lena met Antonio's gaze steadily. In your experience, Mr. Rossini, what makes a man truly vulnerable? Antonio's eyebrows rose. Why do you ask, Cara? Because I'm curious. Lena set down her wineglass with deliberate care. It seems to me that a man with nothing to protect is actually more dangerous than one with something to lose. He has no reason for restraint. The table went very quiet. Paolo laughed uncertainly. She's philosophical, your bride. She's observant, Antonio corrected. His expression shifted, becoming more thoughtful. You have a point, Miss Brooks. A man with stakes makes calculated choices. Exactly. Lena felt Marcello's surprise beside her, but she pressed forward. Don DeLuca is not becoming weak by marrying me. He's becoming unpredictable. And in your world, isn't unpredictability a kind of power? Antonio studied her for a long moment, then threw back his head and laughed, a genuine sound that filled the dining room. Madonna Marcello, where did you find this one? She's sharp. I told you, Marcello said quietly. Strength and intelligence. The tension broke like a snapped wire. Antonio relaxed in his chair, suddenly genial. All right. I'm satisfied. The girl has brains. That's more than most of our wives can claim. He raised his glass again. To your marriage, old friend. May it bring you many strong sons. They drank. Lena's hand shook only slightly as she lifted her glass. The rest of dinner passed in easier conversation, talk of business territories, of mutual acquaintances, of the upcoming wedding reception. Paolo stopped leering and started treating Lena like an actual person. Even Luca spoke once or twice, his voice surprisingly gentle for someone with such hard eyes. But throughout it all, Lena felt the weight of performance. Every word measured, every smile calculated, every gesture designed to project strength she didn't really feel. By the time dessert arrived, exhaustion pressed down on her like a physical force. Finally, mercifully, Antonio pushed back from the table. We should go. Let you rest before your big day. He shook Marcello's hand firmly. No hard feelings about the questions, had to be sure. I understand, Marcello said. Business is business. Indeed. Antonio turned to Lena, and this time his assessment held respect instead of calculation. You'll do well in this life, Miss Brooks. You've got steel in you. That's rare. After they left, Lena sagged against the dining room wall, all the strength draining from her body like water. Oh my God, that was masterful. Marcello stood in front of her, and for the first time since she'd met him, his expression showed something close to pride. What you said about unpredictability, that was brilliant. Antonio respects clever thinking. I was terrified. I know, which makes your performance even more impressive. Marcello's hand came up, almost touching her face before he caught himself and lowered it. You surprised me tonight, Miss Brooks. Lena. The correction came out before she could stop it. If I'm going to be your wife, you should probably use my first name. Something shifted in Marcello's expression, softening, maybe, or recognition. Lena, he repeated as though tasting how it felt. Thank you for tonight, for being what I needed to be, what you are. He stepped back, putting professional distance between them again. Tomorrow will be harder. The wedding, the reception, 200 people watching, judging. I know. Lena pushed off the wall, suddenly desperate for solitude. I should sleep. Yes, but Marcello didn't move. Lena, what you said tonight about men with nothing to protect being more dangerous, did you mean that, or was it just a clever deflection? She considered the question. I think people fight harder when they have something worth protecting, even if that something is forced on them. And do you? Marcello's dark eyes searched hers. Have something worth protecting? My father's life. My own survival. Lena met his gaze steadily. That's what I'm protecting. Nothing more. If the answer disappointed him, he didn't show it. Good night, Lena. Rest well. She climbed the stairs to her suite feeling like she'd run a marathon. Inside, she found her father waiting. He'd been allowed to dine separately, kept away from the Rossinis for reasons no one had explained. How did it go? Richard asked anxiously. Marcello's guard said there were important guests. It went fine. Lena collapsed onto the sofa, too tired to maintain pretense. I passed whatever test they were giving me. Sweetheart, you don't have to do this. Even now, we could… Dad, please. Lena closed her eyes. Tomorrow I'm getting married. Can we just not fight about it tonight? Richard sat beside her, silent for a long moment. Then he wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close the way he had when she was small and scared of thunderstorms. I'm so sorry for all of this. I know. They sat like that until Lena's breathing evened out, until exhaustion claimed her and she fell asleep against her father's shoulder, one last moment of being someone's daughter before she became someone's wife. When she woke hours later, dawn was breaking over Rome. Richard had covered her with a blanket and left at some point. Lena stood at the balcony watching the city wake up, knowing this was her last morning as Lena Brooks. By sunset, she would be Lena DeLuca. The wedding dress waited in her closet like a beautiful trap. Servants would arrive soon to help her prepare, to transform her into the bride Marcello needed her to be. 200 guests would watch her walk down an aisle toward a future she'd never chosen, and she would do it. Because she'd made a promise, because her father's life depended on her playing this role perfectly, because despite everything, the fear, the anger, the grief, some stubborn part of her refused to break. Lena Brooks might be disappearing, but whoever was emerging in her place would survive this. She had to. The knock came at 8 o'clock. Julia swept in with a team of assistants, chattering in rapid Italian about schedules and timelines. Professor Adami arrived to coach her on the Italian phrases she'd need to say during the ceremony. Marco appeared briefly with final self-defense tips, as though Lena might need to fight her way out of her own wedding. Maybe she would. Through it all, Lena moved mechanically. Shower, hair, makeup applied by hands that weren't hers, transforming her face into something camera-ready and ethereal. The dress slipped over her head like a second skin, the champagne silk catching light and turning her into someone worthy of standing beside a man like Marcello DeLuca. Sophia arrived at 3 to inspect the final result. She circled Lena once, twice, her critical eye finding no flaws. Perfect. You look like you belong in our family. Lucky me, Lena said flatly. Sophia's lips twitched. Save the sarcasm for after the vows, Cara. During the ceremony, you're a beautiful, willing bride. I'm neither of those things. Then act well. Sophia adjusted Lena's veil. Acting is half of survival in our world. At 4 o'clock, Marcello's guard knocked. It's time, signorina. Lena's father waited in the corridor wearing a suit Marcello had provided. His eyes filled with tears when he saw her. You're so beautiful, sweetheart. Your mother would be… Don't. Lena's voice cracked. Please don't. Richard offered his arm, and together they walked through the villa toward the gardens where 200 witnesses waited to see Lena Brooks cease to exist. The afternoon sun painted everything gold and amber, turning the grotesque into something almost beautiful. White chairs lined a stone pathway leading to an arch covered in roses. Guests filled those chairs. Men in expensive suits, women in designer dresses, all of them turning to watch as Lena appeared. And at the end of that pathway, beneath that arch, stood Marcello DeLuca. He wore a black suit that made him look like he'd stepped from another century, powerful, patrician, absolutely certain of his place in the world. His silver hair caught the light. Those dark eyes found Lena and held, unwavering, as she walked toward him on her father's arm. This was really happening. The ceremony blurred into fragments. The officiant's words in Italian that she only half understood. Marcello's deep voice repeating vows that sounded almost tender. Her own trembling responses. The weight of the ring he slipped onto her finger. Platinum and diamonds, beautiful and binding. You may kiss your bride. Marcello's hands framed her face with surprising gentleness. His kiss was brief, chaste, nothing like what Lena had feared. Just a press of lips that sealed her fate more surely than any signature ever could. When he pulled back, his eyes searched hers. Breathe, he whispered. It's done. And it was. The guests applauded. Music started, something classical and elegant. Marcello tucked Lena's hand into the crook of his arm and led her back down the aisle as his wife, both of them smiling for the cameras that flashed like small explosions. The reception swallowed them immediately, a blur of introductions, of congratulations that felt like condolences, of hands to shake and names to remember. Lena moved through it on autopilot, her smile fixed in place, while Marcello guided her from group to group with practiced ease. "This is my wife Lena," he kept saying. Each time the words sounded more real, more permanent. Hours passed. Dinner was served at long tables in the villa's ballroom. Toasts were made, some genuine, some barbed with subtle threats disguised as humor. Lena barely tasted the food, barely heard the speeches. She was underwater, drowning slowly while everyone around her celebrated. At some point, Marcello leaned close. "You're doing beautifully. I'm dying inside." "I know." His hand found hers under the table, squeezing once. Just a few more hours. But Lena wasn't sure she had a few more hours left in her. The performance was consuming her, eating away at whatever core of self she had left. By the time the dancing started, she felt hollow. Marcello led her onto the floor for the first dance, some romantic Italian song that made the crowd sigh. His hand settled at her waist, his other hand engulfing hers, and they moved in careful circles while cameras flashed and guests watched. "Look at me," Marcello murmured. "Not at them, just me." Lena lifted her gaze. This close, she could see fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the silver threading his dark lashes. He was handsome, she realized distantly. In another life, under different circumstances, she might have found him attractive. But this wasn't another life. This was her life now. "What are you thinking?" Marcello asked. "That I hate you." His expression didn't change. "I know, but you're still here." "Where else would I go?" "Nowhere?" His hand tightened slightly at her waist. "You're mine now, Lena. Legally, publicly. That protection goes both ways." "Protection?" She almost laughed. "Is that what we're calling it?" The song ended. Marcello bowed formally, then surrendered her to other partners. Business associates who wanted to claim a dance with the new Mrs. DeLuca, each one assessing, questioning, testing. Through it all, Marcello watched. Lena could feel his eyes tracking her across the ballroom, making sure she wasn't overwhelmed, wasn't cornered, wasn't drowning completely. It should have felt controlling. Instead, strangely, it felt like the only lifeline keeping her tethered to shore. By midnight, the crowd had thinned. Her father found her on the terrace, his suitcase already packed for his early morning departure. "I'm sorry," he whispered, holding her tight. "I'm so sorry." "I know, Dad. Just live well, please." "I will. I promise." Richard pulled back, his face wet with tears. "I love you, sweetheart." "I love you too." She watched him leave, escorted by Marcello's guards, knowing this might be the last time she saw him for 6 months. Maybe longer. Maybe forever. Lena stood alone on the terrace, staring at Rome's lights through her tears, until she felt Marcello's presence behind her. "It's time," he said quietly. "The guests have left." Time for what? The wedding night? The thought made panic spike through her veins. Marcello seemed to read her fear. "Your suite has been prepared. Nothing will happen tonight that you don't want to happen. I give you my word." "Your word." Bitterness leaked through. "Like that means anything." "It means everything." Marcello stepped closer, but didn't touch her. "I've given you many reasons not to trust me, Lena, but when I make a promise, I keep it. Tonight you will sleep safely, alone if you prefer." She turned to face him. In the moonlight, his features looked almost vulnerable. Or maybe that was just wishful thinking. "Why are you being kind now?" "Because you survived today with grace and strength. Because you've earned a moment of peace." Marcello held out his hand. "Come, let me show you something." Against her better judgment, Lena took his hand. He led her through the empty villa, upstairs she'd never climbed, to a door she'd never seen. Inside was a suite twice the size of her current one. Bedroom, sitting room, private balcony, bathroom, with a tub that could fit 4 people. "This was my mother's room," Marcello said. "Now it's yours, your space. I won't enter without permission." Lena turned slowly, taking it in. The furniture was beautiful, antique but comfortable. Books lined built-in shelves, art decorated the walls. It looked like a home, not a prison. "I don't understand," she faced him. "Why give me this?" "Because you're my wife now. And despite how this began, I want you to survive it." Marcello moved to the door. "Good night, Lena. Sleep well." "Wait." The word came out before she could stop it. "Where will you sleep?" "My rooms are down the hall, far enough for privacy, close enough for protection." He paused at the threshold. "Welcome to your new life, Mrs. DeLuca. I hope you find it more bearable than you fear." Then he was gone, leaving Lena alone in her gilded cage with its beautiful view and its locked doors and its future she couldn't escape. She collapsed onto the bed, still wearing her wedding dress, too exhausted to cry, too numb to scream. Tomorrow would bring new tests, new performances, new ways to lose herself. But tonight, finally, mercifully, she could stop pretending. Tonight she could just be broken. The gunfire stopped as suddenly as it started, leaving only ringing silence and the acrid smell of cordite. Lena stayed frozen against the marble column, her borrowed pistol still raised, her entire body shaking with adrenaline. Somewhere in the villa, voices shouted in Italian. Marcello's men, she realized, flooding back into the estate now that the threat had been neutralized. Footsteps thundered through the corridor. Lena spun, finger tightening on the trigger before recognizing Marco bursting through the doorway, weapon drawn. His eyes went wide when he saw her. "Miss Brooks." He took in the scene in an instant. The dead attacker, the wounded guard she'd pulled to safety, Lena herself covered in blood that wasn't hers. Santa Madre di Dio. "He's hit." Lena's voice sounded distant to her own ears. "His shoulder. I stopped the bleeding, but he needs... medical is on the way." Marco holstered his weapon and moved to the guard, checking his pulse with professional efficiency. "You did good, Lena. Real good." It was the first time he'd used her first name. "Can you stand?" She tried. Her legs nearly buckled. Marco caught her elbow. "Easy, adrenaline crash. Just breathe." More men poured into the hallway, security teams sweeping for additional threats, medics rushing to the wounded guard. The villa had transformed into controlled chaos, everyone moving with military precision. "Where's Marcello?" The question burst out before Lena could stop it. "Is he... safe?" A new voice cut through the commotion. Lena turned to see Antonio stepping through the doorway, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled, a cut above his eyebrow leaking blood down his face. "Don DeLuca is securing the perimeter. He'll want to see you." "I need to..." Lena gestured vaguely at herself, at the blood soaking her dress. "Now," Antonio said firmly, "he needs to see with his own eyes that you're alive." They found Marcello in the security center, a room Lena had never seen before, hidden behind a false panel in his study. Banks of monitors showed every angle of the villa and grounds. Dead screens marked where cameras had been destroyed during the assault. Marcello stood at the central console, his jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up, barking orders into a phone in rapid Italian. He looked up when Lena entered, and the transformation was instant. The cold commander vanished, replaced by something raw and almost desperate. The phone clattered to the desk as he crossed to her in 3 long strides. "You're bleeding." His hands moved over her, not invasive, but searching, checking for wounds with barely restrained panic. "It's not mine." Lena caught his wrists. "Marcello, I'm fine. I'm not hurt." His dark eyes locked on hers, and Lena saw something in them she'd never seen before. Fear. Real, genuine terror barely leashed behind iron control. They breached the inner perimeter, the safe room. If you'd been slower, if you hadn't... His jaw worked. "Cristo." "But I wasn't slower." She held his gaze, refusing to look away. "You taught me to survive, so I did." Marcello's hands came up to frame her face, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. For a heartbeat, Lena thought he might kiss her. Instead, he pressed his forehead to hers, breathing hard. "I should have been here." "You couldn't have known." "I should have anticipated it." Marcello pulled back, his expression hardening again into something cold and lethal. "Dimitri played me. The meeting was a setup. Keep me away from the villa while his men attacked. If Antonio hadn't realized what was happening, if he hadn't turned back... But he did." Lena glanced at Antonio, who stood near the doorway, looking uncomfortable, witnessing this moment. We all did what we had to do. Marcello studied her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. You saved Roberto's life. Marco told me. The guard who was hit. You pulled him to cover, applied pressure to the wound. Anyone would have... No. Marcello's voice was absolute. Most people freeze under fire. You acted. You fought. His hands dropped to his sides, but his gaze never left her face. You are remarkable. The word landed like a physical touch. Lena felt heat climb her neck, suddenly hyper-aware of how close they were standing, of the intensity in Marcello's eyes. Antonio cleared his throat diplomatically. Don DeLuca, the teams have finished sweeping the grounds. No additional hostiles found. We have 3 dead attackers, 2 wounded in custody. And Dimitri's location has been confirmed. Marcello's expression went absolutely cold. Where? His apartment in Trastevere. He's barricaded himself inside with 6 men. How long to assemble a team? They're ready now, Don. Waiting on your word. Marcello turned back to Lena. I need to handle this. Will you, go? She understood what he was asking. I'll be fine. Marco will stay with you, as will half the security detail. Marcello's thumb brushed her cheek once more, his touch lingering. When I return, we need to talk. About what? Everything. He said it with weight, with promise. Then he was gone, Antonio and a dozen armed men following in his wake. The villa felt cavernous in the aftermath. Lena let Marco escort her back to her suite, where Sofia waited, pacing like a caged panther. The older woman's face crumpled with relief when Lena appeared. Thank the stars. Sofia pulled her into a fierce embrace. When I heard the shooting, I thought... Her voice broke. I'm okay. Lena returned the hug, surprised by how much she needed it. Really? I'm okay. Sofia pulled back, studying her with sharp eyes. You're covered in blood. Roberto's. The guard I pulled to cover. Marco said you fought, that you took down one of the attackers yourself. Had she? The memory was blurry, adrenaline-soaked. Lena remembered the weight of the pistol, the deafening crack of gunfire, the way the man had fallen. I did what you taught me. I didn't freeze. No, you didn't. Sofia's voice held something like pride. You became exactly what Marcello needed you to become. The word should have bothered Lena. Instead, she felt a strange sense of vindication. She'd survived. More than survived. She'd protected others, had proven she could handle herself in Marcello's dangerous world. When had she started thinking of it as their world instead of his? Sofia insisted she shower and change. Lena stood under scalding water until it ran clear, scrubbing away blood and cordite residue, trying to process what had happened. Her hands had stopped shaking. That should have disturbed her more than it did. When she emerged, Sofia had laid out comfortable clothes and ordered food, comfort food, pasta and wine and bread. They ate in Lena's sitting room, neither speaking about the attack directly, but both needing the company. Marcello will handle Dimitri, Sofia said finally, refilling their wine glasses. And when he does, every 2-bit challenger will think twice before testing him again. Because he'll make an example. Because he'll remind them why he's survived 40 years in this business. Sofia's expression was grim. Marcello is patient until patience becomes weakness. Then he's absolutely ruthless. Lena thought about the cold fury in Marcello's eyes when Antonio had given him Dimitri's location. I should feel bad about that, about what he's going to do. But you don't. No. The admission felt important. Dimitri tried to kill me, tried to kill people under Marcello's protection. He deserves whatever's coming. Sofia raised her glass in a small toast. Welcome to the family, Lena. Really welcome. Hours passed. Lena tried to sleep but couldn't, her mind replaying the attack in fragments. The sound of gunfire, the weight of the pistol, the moment she'd pulled the trigger and a man had fallen. She'd killed someone. The realization hit like a physical blow. Lena sat up in bed, breathing hard. She'd taken a life, ended someone's existence. That should have destroyed her, should have sent her spiraling into guilt and horror. Instead, she felt nothing, just a cold clinical acknowledgement of cause and effect. He'd been trying to kill her. She'd defended herself. That was survival. Was this who she'd become? Someone who could kill without remorse? A soft knock at the door. Lena pulled on a robe and opened it to find Marcello standing in the corridor, still in his blood-stained shirt, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "It's done," he said simply. "Dmitri is dead. His organization is scattered. The threat is over." Lena stepped back, letting him enter. He moved to the balcony doors, staring out at Rome in the pre-dawn darkness. Neither spoke for a long moment. "Did he suffer?" Lena asked finally. "Yes." No apology in Marcello's voice. He died knowing exactly why it was happening, that his arrogance and ambition had led him to this end. "Good." Marcello turned to look at her, something shifting in his expression. "You're not horrified." "Should I be?" "Most people would be." "I'm not most people anymore." Lena moved to stand beside him at the balcony. "You made sure of that." "No." Marcello's voice was soft. "You did that yourself. I gave you tools. You chose how to use them." The sky was beginning to lighten, not yet dawn, but that strange gray hour before sunrise when the world held its breath. Lena felt like they were the only two people awake in all of Rome. "I killed someone tonight," she said quietly, "and I don't feel guilty about it. What does that make me?" "Human." Marcello's hand found hers on the railing. "Survival requires hard choices, Lena. You made yours. That doesn't make you a monster. It makes you strong." His touch was warm, solid, grounding. Lena didn't pull away. "When did I stop being afraid of you?" "I don't know. When did you?" She thought about it, really thought. Not the wedding, when fear and anger had still consumed her. Not the first few weeks, when every interaction had felt like a negotiation. But somewhere between Sophia's lessons and Marco's training, between quiet dinners and late-night conversations, the terror had faded into something else. Respect, understanding, and underneath it all, something she wasn't ready to name yet. "I don't know exactly when," Lena admitted, "but I looked at you tonight and my first thought wasn't, 'He's my captor.' It was, 'I need him to be safe.'" Marcello's fingers tightened on hers. "Lena, I'm not saying I've forgiven you for how this started. I don't know if I ever will." She forced herself to look at him. "But I'm not the same person you blackmailed into marriage. That girl is gone." "I know." Marcello's free hand came up to cup her face, his touch gentle despite the violence of the night behind them. "I see who you've become. And she's extraordinary." The space between them felt charged, electric. Lena's heart hammered as Marcello leaned closer, giving her time to pull away, to refuse. She didn't. His kiss was nothing like she'd expected. Not demanding or possessive, but questioning, asking permission even now. Lena's hands came up to his chest, feeling his heart race beneath her palms. For a moment, she hovered on the knife's edge between pushing him away and pulling him closer. Then she fisted her hands in his shirt and kissed him back. Marcello made a low sound, his arm coming around her waist to pull her against him. The kiss deepened, weeks of tension and unspoken electricity finally finding release. Lena felt like she was falling and flying at the same time, every nerve ending alive with sensation. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marcello rested his forehead against hers. "This changes things." "I know. If you want to stop, we stop. If you need time, I've had 3 months." Lena's voice was steadier than she felt. 3 months of learning your world, becoming someone who can survive in it. "I know what I'm choosing, Marcello." "And what are you choosing?" She kissed him again, slower this time, deliberate. "You, this, whatever we're becoming." Marcello's arms tightened around her. "You're certain?" "Are you really asking if I'm sure, or are you looking for permission to stop being so careful with me?" A flash of heat in those dark eyes. "Both." Lena smiled, the first real smile she'd given him since that first impossible choice in his study. "I'm sure. And you can stop being careful now." What happened next was inevitable. The culmination of weeks of tension, of late dinners and charged conversations, of Marcello watching her transform into someone strong enough to stand beside him. He lifted her, carrying her to the bed with surprising tenderness for a man capable of such violence. And Lena let him. Not because she had to, Not because she was trapped or coerced or resigned to her fate, but because for the first time since signing that damn contract, she wanted to. Dawn found them tangled together in silk sheets, Marcello's arm draped over her waist, his breathing deep and even in sleep. Lena studied his face. The harsh lines softened in rest, silver hair falling across his forehead. He looked younger like this, almost vulnerable. The man who'd blackmailed her into marriage was also the man who'd given her the tools to survive. The crime lord who'd taken her freedom had also made her stronger than she'd ever been. The husband she'd hated had somehow become the partner she was choosing. When had everything gotten so complicated? Marcello stirred, his eyes opening to find her watching him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then his hand came up to brush her hair back from her face, his touch achingly gentle. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. "Ask me again in a month." His lips curved. "Fair enough." They lay in comfortable silence as Rome woke around them. Church bells ringing, traffic beginning to hum, the city stretching into a new day. Everything had changed in the span of a single night. The attack, the kiss, the choice. "What happens now?" Lena asked finally. "Now we move forward." Marcello's arm tightened around her. "Dimitri's death will send a message. The vultures will scatter. We'll have breathing room to consolidate power, to transition more operations toward legitimate business." "That's not what I meant." "I know." Marcello turned to face her fully. "You want to know what happens between us?" "Yes." He was quiet for a moment, choosing words carefully. "I told you once that I'm not a romantic man. That still stands, but I also told you that you were remarkable. That's proving truer every day." "That's not an answer." "Because I don't have one yet." Marcello's thumb traced her cheekbone. "This marriage started as a transaction. What it becomes depends on both of us, on choices we make together." "Like last night?" "Like last night." He leaned in, kissing her softly. "Like right now." The kiss was interrupted by sharp knocking at the suite door. Marcello sighed, pulling back. Always something. He dressed quickly, donning yesterday's clothes with casual efficiency. Lena wrapped herself in a robe, watching as he transformed back into Don DeLuca, shoulders squared, expression hardening into that familiar mask of control. But before he opened the door, he turned back to her. "This conversation isn't finished." "I know." Antonio stood in the corridor, looking uncomfortable. "Don DeLuca, my apologies for the interruption, but we have a situation." "What kind of situation?" "Your cousin Lorenzo has arrived from Naples with a contingent of his men. He's demanding to speak with you immediately about the Dimitri incident." Marcello's expression went flat. "Lorenzo has no authority to demand anything. He's claiming the killing violated protocols, that you should have consulted the families before taking such drastic action. Dimitri attacked my home, tried to kill my wife. I needed no one's permission to respond. I explained that. He's insisting on a formal meeting anyway, and he's brought enough men to make refusing complicated." Marcello's jaw tightened. "Tell Lorenzo I'll meet him in 1 hour, in the main salon. And Antonio, make sure our security presence is visible. Very visible." After Antonio left, Marcello turned back to Lena. "I need to handle this." "Family politics?" "Something like that. Lorenzo fancies himself next in line should anything happen to me. He won't like being reminded that I have a wife now. An heir, potentially." The word hung between them. Lena's hand moved instinctively to her flat stomach. They'd been careful, but careful wasn't foolproof. And if she was pregnant— "We'll deal with that if it happens," Marcello said, reading her thoughts. "Right now, I need you to stay in your suite. Lorenzo is ambitious and stupid, a dangerous combination." "I'm not hiding. I'm not asking you to hide. I'm asking you to stay safe while I handle a threat to this family." His expression softened slightly. "Please, Lena. After last night, I can't—" He broke off, jaw working. "Can't what?" "Can't stand the thought of you in danger again so soon." The admission seemed to cost him. "Give me this. Let me protect you for once." The vulnerability in his voice decided her. 1 hour. Then I want to know what's happening." "Fair enough." He kissed her once more, hard and possessive and over too quickly, before striding from the suite. Lena stood at the balcony, watching as black cars arrived in the courtyard below. Men in expensive suits emerged, Lorenzo among them, younger than Marcello, maybe late 40s, with the kind of practiced charm that made Lena's skin crawl. Sofia appeared an hour later, slipping into the suite without knocking. "I heard Lorenzo's here." "Marcello's meeting with him now." "Did he tell you to stay hidden?" "He told me to stay safe." Sofia's lips quirked. "There's a difference. Come on. We can watch from the gallery overlooking the salon. Marcello won't like it, but he'll understand." The gallery was a narrow balcony running along one side of the villa's grand salon, hidden behind decorative ironwork. Lena and Sofia positioned themselves where they could see and hear everything below without being obvious. Marcello stood at one end of the massive room, flanked by Antonio and Marco. Lorenzo held the other end with his contingent, 10 men, all armed, all trying to look more intimidating than they actually were. "Cousin." Lorenzo's smile was all teeth. "I came as soon as I heard about the unfortunate incident with Dimitri." "Unfortunate?" Marcello's voice was ice. "A man attacked my home, endangered my household, and died for it. The only unfortunate element is that I didn't kill him slower." "That's exactly the problem, Marcello. You acted unilaterally, made an example without consulting the Council of Families. Some see that as concerning. Then some need to be reminded of what happens when you attack a Don in his own home." Marcello's words carried the weight of absolute authority. "I owe the Council nothing when defending what's mine." "And your new wife? Is she also yours to endanger?" Lorenzo's gaze swept the room as though looking for Lena. "I heard she fought last night, that she killed. Rather unusual behavior for a college student playing at being a mob wife." Lena's hands clenched on the ironwork. "My wife," Marcello said, his voice dropping to something lethal, "showed more courage in 5 minutes than you've demonstrated in your entire life. And if you speak about her again without respect, we'll have a different kind of conversation. Understand?" Lorenzo held up his hands in mock surrender. "No disrespect intended. I merely worry about you, cousin, about your judgment. Marrying a teenager, starting wars with the Russians. Some wonder if age is affecting your decision-making." The room went deathly quiet. Marcello moved forward with the fluid grace of a predator. "Say that again." "I'm simply expressing concerns shared by several families. You're 68, Marcello. Perhaps it's time to consider—" He didn't get to finish. Marcello's hand shot out, gripping Lorenzo's throat, slamming him back against the wall. The younger man's guards moved, but Antonio and Marco were faster, weapons drawn and aimed. "Listen very carefully," Marcello said, his voice conversational despite the violence of his grip. "You came to my home and questioned my judgment, insulted my wife, suggested I'm too old to lead. Those are 3 mistakes, Lorenzo, 3 more than I typically allow." Lorenzo's face was turning purple. "Marcello, I am Don of this family because I earned it, because I'm smart enough, ruthless enough, and patient enough to maintain power in a world full of ambitious idiots like you." Marcello's grip tightened. "My wife is none of your concern. My methods are none of your concern. And if you ever set foot in my home with veiled threats again, you'll leave in a body bag. Are we clear?" Lorenzo managed a strangled nod. Marcello released him, stepping back. "Now get out, and tell whatever family sent you that Marcello De Luca is still very much in control." Lorenzo and his men retreated, practically running from the villa. The sound of car engines roared to life, tires squealing as they fled. Marcello stood in the center of the salon, breathing hard, his expression still dark with fury. "Well," Sofia murmured beside Lena, "that was restrained for him." Restrained? 10 years ago, Lorenzo would be dead right now. Marcello's mellowing in his old age. They descended from the gallery quietly. When Lena entered the salon, Marcello's head snapped up, tension bleeding from his shoulders when he saw her. "You watched. Sofia thought I should understand family dynamics." Sofia thinks many things, but there was no real anger in his voice. Marcello dismissed Antonio and Marco with a gesture, waiting until they were alone before speaking again. "Lorenzo is a fool, but a connected fool. This isn't over. What will he do? Spread poison. Tell the other families I'm losing control, that my marriage has made me weak. Try to build support for a challenge. And will they listen? Some might. Others will wait to see how I respond. Marcello's hand found hers, which is why I need to accelerate our plans. The legitimate business transitions, the charitable foundation. We need to show strength and stability. We? The word felt significant. We. Marcello pulled her closer. Last night changed things, Lena. You're not just my wife on paper anymore. You're my partner, if you choose to be. Lena thought about the attack, about fighting beside men who'd die to protect this family, about Marcello's hands framing her face with desperate relief, about choosing him in the gray hour before dawn. I choose it, she said, but on my terms too. No more secrets. No more treating me like I'm fragile. If we're doing this together, we're really doing it. Agreed. Marcello's thumb brushed her knuckles. Though you should know, my world is about to get more complicated. Lorenzo's challenge will force other families to choose sides. Some will test us. The next few months will be dangerous. More dangerous than last night? Different kind of danger, political instead of physical. Though in our world, politics can be just as deadly. Then we handle it. Lena surprised herself with how much she meant it. Together. Marcello studied her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression, softening, opening. How did I get this lucky? You didn't. You blackmailed me. And somehow ended up with a partner stronger than I deserve. Don't get sentimental on me now. Wouldn't dream of it. But he smiled when he said it, and Lena felt something in her chest loosen. They stood there in the empty salon, morning light streaming through tall windows, the villa quiet around them. 3 months ago, Lena had signed a contract in this house believing her life was over. Now, standing in Marcello's arms, she realized it had just begun. Not the life she'd planned, not the future she'd imagined, but hers nonetheless. And she was finally ready to claim it. The weeks following Lorenzo's confrontation blurred into a careful dance of power and perception. Lena found herself thrust deeper into Marcello's world than she'd ever imagined, not as decoration, but as active participant. Morning strategy sessions replaced leisurely breakfasts. She sat beside Marcello as he met with legitimate business partners, learning to read the subtle tells that separated honest deals from veiled threats. Sophia taught her the art of social warfare, which families to court, which to distance from, how a well-placed word at the right dinner could shift alliances. Politics is just violence in prettier clothes, Sophia explained over espresso one morning. The same rules apply. Show weakness, and you'll be devoured. Lena was learning not to show weakness. She was also learning other things, like how Marcello's hand would find the small of her back in crowded rooms, a silent claim that she belonged beside him. How his eyes would track her across the villa even when he was deep in conversation with dangerous men. How their nights had transformed from careful distance to tangled sheets and whispered confessions in the dark. I never expected this, Marcello had admitted one night, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. To care about someone this way. To need them. Need is dangerous in your world. Everything is dangerous in my world, but you're worth the risk. It should have felt like manipulation, pretty words from a man who'd forced her into marriage. But Lena had seen Marcello's carefully constructed control crack too many times now to doubt his sincerity. The way he'd looked when he thought she might be hurt. The fury when Lorenzo had insulted her. The tenderness he showed only when they were alone. This wasn't the relationship she'd imagined, but it was real. 6 weeks after the attack, Lena woke feeling wrong. Not sick, exactly, but off, her body strange and unfamiliar. She made it to the bathroom before her stomach rebelled, retching until nothing remained. When she emerged, Marcello stood in the doorway, concern etched across his features. How long has this been happening? First time, Lena rinsed her mouth, avoiding his eyes. Probably something I ate. Or something else. His voice was careful. When was your last cycle? The question made her freeze. When had it been? She'd been so consumed with training, with learning this new life, that she hadn't paid attention. 6 weeks? 7? I need to see a doctor, she said quietly. Marcello called his personal physician within the hour. Dr. Castellano arrived with a medical bag and discretion honed over decades of serving the DeLuca family. She examined Lena in privacy, asked gentle questions, drew blood for testing. "The results will take a few hours," Dr. Castellano said, packing her supplies. "But based on the symptoms and timeline, Mrs. DeLuca, I believe congratulations may be in order." After she left, Lena sat on the edge of the bed, hands trembling. A baby. She might be carrying Marcello's child, the heir he'd married her to produce. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt something else entirely. Wonder. And underneath it, fierce protectiveness for this potential life. Marcello found her there 20 minutes later, still sitting in stunned silence. He lowered himself beside her, close but not touching, giving her space. "Talk to me," he said softly. "I don't know what to say." Lena's hands pressed against her still flat stomach. "This was the whole point, wasn't it? Why you married me? To have an heir." It was. Marcello's honesty never wavered. "But that was before." "Before what?" "Before you became more than a means to an end." His hand covered hers on her stomach. "If you're pregnant, Lena, it won't be just my heir. It'll be our child. There's a difference." "Is there?" She finally looked at him. "Or are you just better at making cages feel like choices?" Marcello flinched as though she'd struck him. "If you believe that, I've failed more than I realized. I don't know what I believe anymore." The admission hurt. 3 months ago, I hated you. Now I'm in bed with you, possibly carrying your baby, and I can't separate what's real from what I've convinced myself is real because it's easier than facing the truth. "What truth?" "That you took everything from me. My freedom, my future, my choices, and now my body might not even be my own anymore." Marcello withdrew his hand, standing abruptly. He moved to the window, shoulders rigid. When he spoke, his voice was rough with something that might have been regret. "You're right. I did take those things. I told myself it was necessity, that I was offering you an impossible choice because the alternative was worse. But the truth is, I wanted you from the moment you walked into my study with fear and fury in your eyes, and I used your father's debt to make you mine." The raw honesty stunned her. "Marcello." "Let me finish." He turned to face her, and Lena saw something she'd never seen before: shame. "I've spent 40 years building power, making hard decisions, doing terrible things for what I told myself were good reasons. But taking you? That was selfishness dressed up as practicality, and if you hate me for it, you have every right." Lena stood, crossing to him. "I don't hate you. You should. Maybe. But I don't." She took his hand, placing it back on her stomach. "And if there's a baby, it deserves parents who choose each other, not a mother trapped and a father consumed with guilt. So what do? We start over." Lena's voice was steady now, certain. "Right here. Right now. No more pretending the beginning wasn't what it was, but also no more letting it define what we become." Marcello searched her face. "You'd give me that? After everything?" "I'd give us that. Because this," she gestured between them, "whatever this is, it's real now, and I want to see where it goes." His kiss was answer enough, desperate and grateful and full of promise. The test results came back positive 3 hours later. Dr. Castellano estimated Lena was about 7 weeks along. "Everything looks healthy," she said with a warm smile. "But we'll want to monitor closely given your age and circumstances. I'd recommend—" "Whatever you recommend, we'll do," Marcello interrupted. "Money is no object. Lena's health and the baby's health are the only priorities." After the doctor left, they sat together in Marcello's study, the same room where this had all begun. Lena curled in the leather chair while Marcello poured himself whiskey with shaking hands. "I need to tell you something," he said, not looking at her, "about why this matters so much. Why I needed an heir." "You don't have to." "I do." Marcello drained half his glass. "I had a son. Years ago, before you were born. His name was Alessandro. His mother was someone I cared for but never married, a mistake I've regretted every day since." Lena went still. "What happened to him?" "He died when he was 6, kidnapped by rivals who wanted to hurt me. They sent him back in pieces." Marcello's voice was flat, emotionless in the way of old wounds that still bled. I killed every person involved, burned their organizations to ash, but it didn't bring him back. Marcello, I'm so sorry. I never wanted children again after that. The risk, the vulnerability, I couldn't face it. But as I got older, as my rivals started circling, I realized I needed legacy, someone to carry forward what I'd built. So I told myself I'd do it differently this time, controlled, safe. That's why you wanted a young wife, someone you could protect, someone I could control. The correction was bitter. But you refused to be controlled. You learned everything I taught you and became someone formidable in your own right, someone strong enough to survive this world without me hovering over every decision. Lena moved to kneel beside his chair, taking his hands. Our baby will be safe. We'll make sure of it, together. I can't lose another child, Lena. I won't survive it. Then we build something better, something safer. Her mind was already working, pieces clicking into place. You said you wanted to transition toward legitimate business, so we accelerate that. We take the foundation you've created and transform it into something that doesn't make our child a target. It's not that simple. Nothing about this has been simple. Lena's voice was fierce. But we're both smart enough and stubborn enough to make it work. And I won't raise our baby in a world where every meal could be poisoned, every school day could end in kidnapping. If you want me as your partner, Marcello, then we do this my way too. He studied her for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. Tell me your way. Over the next hour, Lena laid out a plan. The DeLuca organization would systematically divest from anything illegal, drugs, weapons, protection rackets. Those operations would be sold or shut down entirely. The legitimate businesses, shipping, construction, real estate, would expand to fill the gap. It would take years and cost millions, but the result would be a clean empire their child could inherit without blood on their hands. The families will never agree, Marcello warned. Too many of them profit from the old ways. So we don't ask permission. We make it inevitable. Lena's strategic mind, dormant during college, had awakened fully in this world. We start buying out partners, renegotiating contracts, creating distance between DeLuca interests and criminal activity. By the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late to stop. And Lorenzo, the others who want to challenge me, we give them what they want, on our terms. Lena stood, pacing as ideas crystallized. Lorenzo wants power. We carve out a territory for him, something profitable but isolated. Let him be king of his little kingdom while we transform the empire into something he can't touch. Marcello's expression shifted from skepticism to something like admiration. You've been thinking about this since the attack. Since I realized I didn't want to just survive in your world, I wanted to change it. Lena met his eyes. For our child. For us. It's ambitious, dangerous. Everything worth doing is. Marcello stood, pulling her into his arms. Have I mentioned you're remarkable? Once or twice. She leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his chest. Think we can actually do this? With you beside me? Yes. He pressed a kiss to her temple. But we need to be smart, strategic. Start with the families we can trust. They began that night. Marcello called a meeting of his inner circle, Antonio, Marco, Sofia, and 3 other trusted advisors who'd served the family for decades. Lena sat beside him at the head of the table, her presence alone making a statement. We're restructuring, Marcello announced without preamble. Over the next 2 years, DeLuca interests will transition entirely to legitimate operations. Everyone in this room will be compensated generously for their loyalty during this change. Those who can't accept the new direction are free to leave with generous severance. The room erupted in questions. Marcello let them wash over him, then raised a hand for silence. This isn't a discussion. It's a directive. My wife is pregnant. Our child will inherit an empire built on legal foundations, not blood money. If you're with us, we have work to do. If you're not, leave now. No one left. Antonio spoke first, his voice careful. Don DeLuca, with respect, this kind of transition will take resources, time. And the other families won't sit quietly while we divest from shared interests. Which is why we're buying them out first. Lena's voice cut through the room. Heads turned to her in surprise. We start with the smaller operations. the ones that won't attract immediate attention. We find buyers who will maintain the business without DeLuca involvement. We document everything meticulously, so there's no question of our separation from illegal activity. Sophia leaned forward, eyes sharp with interest. And when the larger families notice, when they realize we're cutting them out, we offer partnerships in the legitimate businesses, construction contracts, shipping routes, real estate ventures. Lena had spent hours working this out with Marcello. We make it more profitable to work with us legally than to fight us over the scraps of the old empire. Some will still fight, Marco observed. Men like Lorenzo don't care about profit if it means bowing to change. Let them fight. Marcello's voice was steel. We'll be ready. The meeting lasted 4 hours. By the end, they had a roadmap, aggressive but achievable. Certain operations would cease immediately. Others would be sold within 6 months. The most entangled interests would take 2 years to fully divest. It was ambitious, possibly insane. But as Lena watched Marcello's people rally around the vision, she felt hope kindle for the first time since arriving in Rome. The first real test came 3 weeks later. Lorenzo called for a formal gathering of the families, something that hadn't happened in years. The meeting would take place in Naples, neutral territory, with representatives from every major organization in attendance. The stated purpose was discussing concerns about recent DeLuca decisions. Everyone knew it was Lorenzo's play for power. He'll argue you've gone soft, Antonio warned as they prepared for the trip. That marriage and impending fatherhood have made you weak. He'll call for a vote of no confidence. Let him call for whatever he wants. Marcello adjusted his cufflinks with practiced ease. I've survived 40 years by being smarter than my enemies, not louder. Lena dressed carefully for the meeting, a tailored suit that managed to be both professional and subtly threatening, her hair pulled back severely, minimal jewelry except for her wedding ring. She looked like exactly what she was, Marcello's partner, not his ornament. The meeting hall in Naples was a converted monastery, all stone arches and vaulted ceilings, beautiful and cold. Representatives from 15 families gathered around a massive table. Lena recognized some from the wedding, others from the research she'd done over the past months. Lorenzo sat directly across from Marcello, his smile predatory. Beside him sat Carlo Benedetti, head of the Neapolitan faction and Lorenzo's primary ally. Other family heads watched with the careful neutrality of people waiting to see which way the wind would blow. Cousin, Lorenzo's voice carried false warmth. Thank you for making the journey, and congratulations on your impending fatherhood. Though I must say, starting a family at your age seems optimistic. Concerned about my health, Lorenzo? Marcello's tone was mild. How touching. Concerned about stability, about leadership. Lorenzo stood, commanding the room's attention. The DeLuca family has been the backbone of our organization for 3 generations, but recent decisions suggest that backbone is weakening. Be specific. Marcello leaned back in his chair, the picture of unconcern. You're dismantling profitable operations, selling off interests that have served us for decades, creating distance from traditional business models that benefit all our families. Lorenzo's hands spread across the table. Some might call that transformation. I call it abandonment. Murmurs of agreement from several representatives. Carlo nodded encouragingly. You're right, Marcello said calmly. I am transforming the DeLuca organization, but not abandoning anything, building something better. Legal, sustainable, and far more profitable long-term than the scraps we've been fighting over. Legal. Lorenzo spat the word like a curse. We're criminals, Marcello. That's what we are. What we've always been. Pretending otherwise is delusion. Is it? Lena spoke for the first time, drawing every eye. The Medici family started as criminals, too. So did the Rockefellers, the Kennedys. They transformed blood money into legitimate dynasties that still hold power today. Why should we be any different? Lorenzo's smile sharpened. The American speaks. Tell me, Mrs. DeLuca, does your husband often let you think you have a voice in these matters? My wife, Marcello's voice dropped to something lethal, is the reason we're having this conversation at all. Her strategic mind designed the transition plan. Her vision will secure our futures. And if you disrespect her again, Lorenzo, we'll settle this the old-fashioned way. The threat silenced the room. Carlo cleared his throat diplomatically. Perhaps we should hear the full proposal before making judgments. Don DeLuca, you mentioned profitability. Show us. Lena stood, opening the leather portfolio she'd brought. Inside were projections, financial models, contracts already in negotiation. She distributed copies around the table with Sophia's help. 5 years ago, combined family interest generated approximately $200 million annually from traditional operations, Lena began, falling into the presentation mode she'd learned at Columbia. 70% of that came from activities that carry significant legal risk: arrest, asset seizure, violent competition. She let that sink in before continuing. The DeLuca transition plan focuses on the 30% that's already legitimate while expanding into new markets: shipping, construction, real estate development, renewable energy. Our projections show that within 3 years, legitimate operations will exceed current total revenue by 40%, with zero legal risk. That's impossible, someone muttered. It's math. Lena tapped the documents. Everything's there. Conservative estimates based on market research and existing contracts. The shipping expansion alone will add $75 million annually once fully operational. She walked them through each sector, answering questions with the confidence of someone who'd spent weeks mastering every detail. By the end, several family heads were leaning forward, interest overcoming skepticism. Lorenzo, however, looked furious. Pretty numbers on paper, but you're asking us to abandon certainty for speculation, to trust that your plan will work while we dismantle what we know does work. I'm not asking you to trust anything, Marcello interjected. I'm informing you of what DeLuca interests will do regardless of your approval, but I'm offering partnerships to those with vision enough to see the opportunity. And those who refuse, Carlo asked quietly, you're free to continue your traditional operations. DeLuca will simply no longer participate. We'll buy out our shares, sever connections, and wish you well. Marcello's smile was sharp. Of course, without DeLuca logistics and protection, you may find those operations more challenging to maintain. The threat was clear. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably. Lorenzo stood abruptly. This is exactly what I warned about. Marcello using his position to strong-arm us into his fantasy of legitimacy. I say we vote. Right now. Confidence in Don DeLuca's leadership. By all means, Marcello gestured magnanimously. Let's vote. The tension was suffocating. Lena watched as Lorenzo counted heads, confident he had the numbers. Carlo would vote with him. 3 other families who profited most from traditional operations would likely follow, but Marcello had been working the room before the meeting even started. All in favor of continuing Don DeLuca's leadership? Antonio called the vote formally. Hands rose around the table. 8 of 15. Opposed? Lorenzo's hand shot up, Carlos followed, then 3 others. 5 total. 2 abstentions. Antonio's voice held satisfaction. Motion carries. Don DeLuca retains full authority over DeLuca operations. Lorenzo's face went purple. This isn't over. Actually, it is. Marcello stood, buttoning his jacket with casual precision. I've tolerated your posturing out of respect for our family connection, Lorenzo, but that tolerance ends today. You have 2 choices. Accept a generous territory in Sicily, run it as you see fit with DeLuca support, and stay out of our transformation. Or continue this challenge and discover exactly how ruthless an old man can be. You're threatening me in front of witnesses? I'm offering you survival. Take it or leave it. The room held its breath. Finally, Carlo leaned over and whispered something to Lorenzo. The younger man's jaw worked furiously before he gave a tight nod. I'll consider your offer, Lorenzo bit out. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, the offer expires. Marcello took Lena's hand, helping her gather her materials. Gentlemen, this meeting is adjourned. They walked out together, Marcello's security falling into formation around them. Lena didn't breathe properly until they were in the car, Naples disappearing behind them. That was terrifying, she admitted. That was politics. Marcello's thumb brushed her knuckles. And you were magnificent. Did you see their faces when you presented the numbers? Half of them were ready to invest on the spot. The other half wanted to shoot us. Only Lorenzo and maybe Carlo. The others are pragmatists. They'll come around once they see the profits. Marcello pulled her close. We won, Lena. The first real battle, and we won. Lorenzo's not done. No, but he's cornered now. He'll take the Sicily offer because refusing means war, and he knows he'd lose. Marcello's hand rested on her still flat stomach. Our child will inherit something worth having, something clean. The word struck deep. Lena thought about the baby growing inside her, barely the size of a lemon, but already changing everything. A year ago, she'd been planning sorority events and stressing over midterms. Now she was strategizing with crime families and carrying the heir to a criminal empire in transition. Her life had become unrecognizable, but looking at Marcello, seeing the fierce pride and love in his eyes, Lena realized she wouldn't change it. Not the journey, not even the terrible beginning. Because that beginning had led here, to partnership, to purpose, to a future she was actively building instead of passively accepting. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Dr. Castellano visited weekly, pronouncing both mother and baby healthy. Lena's body changed gradually. The subtle swell of her belly, the way her clothes fit differently, the strange cravings that had Marcello's staff scrambling to find pickles and chocolate at 3 a.m. But the bigger changes were in their world. Lorenzo accepted the Sicily territory with poor grace, but accepted nonetheless. 2 other families signed partnership agreements for the legitimate ventures, investing heavily in the shipping expansion. The transition was happening faster than even Lena had projected. 4 months into the pregnancy, Marcello took her to see their latest acquisition, a massive shipping facility in Civitavecchia, Rome's port city. Containers stretched to the horizon, cranes swinging cargo from ships flying flags from every nation. This will be the heart of our legitimate empire, Marcello explained as they toured the operation. Clean shipping routes, legal contracts, no product we can't document to the last detail. Lena watched workers loading containers with practiced efficiency. And the others? The families who haven't signed on yet? They're watching, waiting to see if this works. But it is working, Lena. Revenue is up 18% over last quarter. All legal, all documented, all sustainable. That night, back at the villa, Marcello found Lena in what would soon be the nursery. She'd been spending hours here, planning colors and furniture, imagining their child in this room. "What are you thinking?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his hands splaying over her rounded belly. "That this is real now. The baby, the changes, everything we're building." Lena leaned back against him. "I'm scared, Marcello." "Of what?" "That I won't be a good mother. That our child will grow up and hate me for choosing you despite how everything started." Marcello turned her to face him. "Our child will grow up knowing their mother is the strongest, smartest, most courageous person I've ever met. Someone who took an impossible situation and transformed it into something beautiful." "You're biased. I'm honest." He kissed her softly. "And our child will know they're loved. By both of us. That's what matters." The baby kicked, a flutter against Lena's ribs that made her gasp. Marcello's eyes went wide. "Was that the baby?" "First time I've really felt movement." Lena guided his hand to the spot. "Wait. There." Another kick, stronger this time. Marcello's expression transformed, wonder and fear and overwhelming love all at once. For a moment, he looked younger, vulnerable, nothing like the powerful crime lord who'd blackmailed her into marriage. He looked like a man about to become a father. "Hi there, little one," he whispered to her belly. "I'm your papa, and I promise you, you'll have a better childhood than I did, a safer world. Your mother and I are making sure of it." Lena's eyes burned with unexpected tears. "We're really doing this. We're really doing this." Marcello kissed her stomach, then her mouth. "All of it. Together." The months continued to pass in a blur of doctor's appointments and business negotiations, of Lena's growing belly and their shrinking criminal empire. By her 3rd trimester, the transition was nearly complete. De Luca Interests had divested from everything questionable, partnered on everything legitimate, and was showing record profits. Lorenzo had even grudgingly admitted the plan was working, though he refused to speak directly to Lena. Small victories. Her father called weekly now. The 6-month monitoring period had ended, replaced by genuine connection. Richard had sold the Connecticut business, paid off all legitimate debts, and was rebuilding his life. He sounded happier than Lena had heard him in years. "I'm proud of you, sweetheart," he said during one call. I know I don't have the right to be after what I put you through, but seeing what you've built, who you've become, Dad, Lena's voice was soft. I forgave you months ago. You made mistakes, but you also gave me something you didn't intend. You gave me a chance to discover I'm stronger than I ever knew. Does that mean you're happy? Really happy? Lena looked across the study where Marcello sat reviewing contracts, his reading glasses perched on his nose, silver hair catching the afternoon light. As though sensing her gaze, he looked up and smiled, the real smile he saved only for her. Yeah, Dad, I'm happy. She was 8.5 months pregnant when the call came. Marcello's phone rang at 2 a.m, never a good sign. He answered with terse Italian, his expression darkening with each word. When he hung up, he was already moving, pulling on clothes with swift efficiency. What's wrong? Lena struggled to sit up, her belly making the movement awkward. Carlo Benedetti is dead. Shot outside his home in Naples an hour ago. Marcello's voice was grim. His family is claiming Lorenzo ordered the hit. Did he? Probably. Carlo was negotiating with us about transitioning his operations. Lorenzo saw it as betrayal. What does this mean? War. Unless I can stop it. Marcello came to her side of the bed, cupping her face. I need to go to Naples, now. Mediate before this explodes into open conflict that could undo everything we've built. Then I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. You're due in 2 weeks, which means I have 2 weeks. Lena's voice was steel. You said it yourself. We're partners. If the families see me heavy with your child, choosing to stand beside you even now, it sends a message that we're stable. United, strong enough to weather this. Marcello looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he kissed her fiercely. You're going to give me a heart attack one of these days. Probably. But you'll die knowing I was by your side. They flew to Naples by private jet, arriving as dawn broke over the city. The meeting was set for noon in the same monastery hall where they'd faced Lorenzo months before. This time, the atmosphere was electric with tension and grief. Carlo's eldest son, Marco Benedetti, sat where his father had, young, angry, demanding blood. Lorenzo killed my father, Marco stated flatly. I want justice. You want revenge, Lorenzo shot back. Your father was negotiating to betray our traditional interests. He chose sides and paid the price. So you admit ordering the hit? I admit nothing, but I won't pretend to mourn a traitor. The room erupted in shouting. Lena watched Marcello's jaw tighten as he let it play out, waiting for the right moment. When it came, he stood, not loudly, not aggressively, just stood, and the room gradually fell silent. This stops now, Marcello said quietly. Carlo is dead. Lorenzo may or may not have ordered it. Frankly, it doesn't matter. What matters is whether we tear ourselves apart over old grudges or whether we choose something better. Easy for you to say, Marco spat. It wasn't your father who died. My son died. Marcello's voice was ice. 30 years ago, murdered by rivals who wanted to hurt me. So yes, Marco, I know exactly what you're feeling. And I'm telling you, revenge is a pit that never fills. You kill Lorenzo, his allies kill you, and on it goes until everyone's dead and nothing is accomplished. Then what would you have me do? Let my father's murder go unanswered? I would have you be smarter than the men who came before you. Marcello gestured to Lena, who stood with visible effort, her pregnancy impossible to ignore. My wife and I are building something new. An empire where your children won't have to fear kidnapping, where legitimate profit replaces blood money, where strength comes from unity instead of endless vendetta. Carlo saw that vision. He was brave enough to pursue it. Honor his memory by continuing what he started. The room was silent. Then Lena spoke, her voice carrying despite her exhaustion. I'm 20 years old and 9 months pregnant. I shouldn't be in Naples right now. I should be in Rome preparing for my baby. But I'm here because this matters. Because the future we're building matters. She met Marco's angry gaze. Your father believed in that future enough to risk his life. Don't let his death be meaningless by dragging us back into the past. Marco's hands clenched on the table. And Lorenzo? He just walks away? No. Marcello's voice was absolute. Lorenzo's Sicily territory is forfeit. He's exiled from all family business. and if he ever sets foot near any of us again, I'll kill him myself. Lorenzo lurched to his feet. You can't. I can. Marcello's eyes were dark with promise. And I will. You've tested my patience for the last time, cousin. Take exile or take a bullet. Choose now. For a long moment, Lorenzo looked like he might actually fight. Then he saw the faces around the table, saw that no one would back him, that his challenge had finally broken Marcello's carefully controlled restraint. Fine. Lorenzo's voice shook with fury. Exile. But this isn't over, Marcello. Yes, it is. Marcello sat back down. Antonio, have Lorenzo escorted from the city. I don't want to see him again. As guards removed Lorenzo from the hall, Marco Benedetti slumped in his chair. My father deserved better than this. Your father deserves to be remembered as a visionary, Lena said gently, as someone who helped transform our world into something his grandchildren can be proud of. Be that legacy, Marco. Slowly the young man nodded. I'll need time. Take it, but when you're ready, we'll be here. The meeting adjourned with fragile peace intact. On the jet back to Rome, Lena finally let exhaustion claim her. She woke to Marcello stroking her hair, his expression tender. We did it, he murmured. Stopped the war, removed Lorenzo, gave the families a path forward that doesn't end in blood. For now, Lena said, stretching carefully, there will be other challenges. I know, but we'll face them together. His hand rested on her belly. All three of us soon. They made it back to the villa with hours to spare before Lena's water broke. The labor was long, 16 hours of pain and pressure, and Marcello refusing to leave her side despite Dr. Castellano's gentle suggestions that he might want to wait elsewhere. I'm not going anywhere, he told Lena firmly, holding her hand through contractions. We started this together. We finish it together. At 4:17 in the morning, their daughter entered the world, tiny and furious, with Marcello's dark eyes and Lena's stubborn chin. The doctor placed her on Lena's chest, and everything else fell away. She's perfect, Lena whispered, tears streaming down her face. Marcello leaned over them both, his own eyes wet. She's a miracle. They named her Elena Sofia De Luca. Elena for Lena's mother, Sofia for the woman who'd taught Lena to survive. The baby slept in the crook of Lena's arm, while Marcello watched them both with fierce protectiveness. I meant what I said, he told Lena quietly, about building a better world for her. She'll grow up safe, loved, free to choose her own path. She'll grow up knowing both her parents chose each other, Lena corrected, that we built something beautiful from something broken. Do you regret it? Any of it? Lena thought about the terrified girl who'd signed a contract in Marcello's study 9 months ago, about the journey from victim to survivor to partner, about the baby in her arms who represented everything they'd fought to create. I regret how it started, she said honestly. I'll probably always regret that, but I don't regret where we ended up. Where we ended up, Marcello repeated. Not where we're ending. This is just the beginning. He was right. Over the following months, as Elena grew from newborn to infant, the De Luca Empire continued its transformation. Marco Benedetti signed on fully, bringing Neapolitan interests into the legitimate fold. Other families followed. Within a year, the transition was complete. An organization once built on crime now operated entirely within legal bounds, profitable, powerful, and clean. Lena stood on the villa's balcony one evening, watching the sun set over Rome while Elena slept in her arms. Marcello joined her, wrapping them both in his embrace. What are you thinking? He asked. That a year ago I hated you. Now I can't imagine my life without you. Is that forgiveness? It's acceptance. Lena turned to look at him. Of who we were, who we became, and who we're still becoming. You blackmailed me into marriage, Marcello. That will always be true. But you also gave me the tools to become someone stronger than I ever imagined, someone who could stand beside you as an equal. You were always my equal. I just had to learn to see it. We both had to learn a lot. Lena kissed him softly. But we learned together. They stood there as darkness fell, 3 people who'd become a family through the strangest possible journey. Elena stirred in her sleep, her tiny hand grasping Lena's finger with surprising strength. She's going to be formidable, Marcello observed. With us as parents? Absolutely. Will we tell her someday how we started? Lena considered. We'll tell her the truth, that love doesn't always begin perfectly, but what matters is what you build with it. That her father made terrible choices and her mother forgave him, that we created something beautiful from something broken. And if she asks whether I regret forcing you into marriage, you tell her that regret and gratitude can coexist, that you're sorry for the pain you caused but grateful for where it led. Lena met his eyes. Because that's the truth, isn't it? Every word. Marcello's hand covered hers on Elena's small back. I love you, Lena. I don't know when it happened, but somewhere between that first contract and now, you became everything to me. I love you too. The words came easier than she expected, and that's the most surprising thing of all. 2 years later, they renewed their vows. Not the forced ceremony in the villa's chapel with Lena in borrowed silk and fury in her heart. This time, they stood on the Amalfi Coast at sunset, surrounded by family and friends who'd become genuine allies. Richard walked Lena down the aisle, tears streaming down his face. Sophia stood as matron of honor. Elena Tottle walked ahead, throwing flower petals with chaotic enthusiasm. And Marcello waited at the altar with the same intensity he'd shown that first day in his study, but transformed now by love instead of calculation. Lena Brooks DeLuca, she said when her turn came. Choose you, Marcello. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because you've shown me strength comes in many forms, and the strongest thing we can do is choose to build something better from our mistakes. I, Marcello DeLuca, he responded, voice rough with emotion. Choose you, Lena. I took your freedom once and told myself it was necessary. Now I give you mine freely, because you've taught me that love isn't about possession. It's about partnership. About two people choosing each other every day. When they kissed, the gathered crowd erupted in cheers. Elena laughed from Sophia's arms, not understanding but delighted by the celebration. Later, at the reception, Lena stood with Marcello on a terrace overlooking the sea. The DeLuca empire stretched behind them, legitimate now, powerful still, but transformed into something their daughter could inherit with pride. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd said no? Lena asked. That first day in your study? Every day. Marcello pulled her close. I would have hurt your father. You would have hated me forever. And we would have missed all of this. And if I had to do it over, knowing everything that would happen, what would you choose? Lena thought about the journey, the terror and anger, the training and transformation, the moment everything shifted from obligation to choice, about their daughter sleeping peacefully upstairs, about the empire they'd built together, about the man beside her who'd started as her captor and become her partner. I'd choose this, she said finally. Not the beginning, never the beginning, but the middle and the end and everything we made from impossible circumstances. I'd choose you, Marcello, every time. Even knowing the cost? Especially knowing the cost. Lena turned in his arms, meeting his dark eyes, the same eyes that had assessed her so coldly 9 months pregnant, that now looked at her with devotion. Because the cost was my old life, and what I got in return was something I never knew I needed. What's that? Purpose. Partnership. A love that started as a transaction and became something real. She smiled. You can't plan for that kind of transformation. You can only choose it when it appears. Marcello kissed her, deep and sure, tasting of champagne and promise. Around them, their world continued its celebration. Inside, their daughter slept peacefully, and above them, the stars emerged one by one over the Italian coast. To new beginnings, Marcello whispered against her lips. To the ones we choose, Lena corrected, together. And standing there in his arms, the empire they'd built stretching behind them and their future gleaming ahead, Lena Brooks DeLuca finally understood the truth she'd been learning all along. Sometimes the darkest beginnings led to the most unexpected destinations. Sometimes impossible choices revealed hidden strength. And sometimes, just sometimes, a marriage that started with a contract written in fear could transform into a love story built on choice. Their story hadn't begun perfectly. It had begun with blackmail and coercion and a desperate father's debt. But it was ending, or rather, continuing, as something beautiful. Not despite its complicated beginning, but because they'd chosen to transform it together. And that, Lena realized, was the greatest power of all. Not the empire, not the money, not even the safety they'd created for Elena, but the power to take broken pieces and build something whole, to face the darkness and decide together to create light. She'd signed a contract once, believing her life was over. Now, holding the hand of the man she'd chosen to love, their daughter sleeping peacefully nearby, their empire transformed and their future bright, Lena knew the truth. Her life hadn't ended in that study. It had finally, truly begun.